Gas masks and grenades. Gas masks and grenades. Gas masks and grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades.
Hey, what is happening? It's Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Jeff. What's going on today? We have a mid-afternoon. I managed to get a rock star out of bed early, like real early on a Tuesday afternoon. It is Tuesday, right? I think it's Tuesday. Anyway, today, very stoked to have on the program Mr. Isaac Faulk. You probably know him from a number of different bands if you're into any of the current sort of up-to-date extreme metal thing, right? So Isaac plays drums and writes and plays. I don't know if he plays guitar. We're gonna ask him. I know he writes with the guitar for this band, but for Blood Incantation, he doesn't play live. He probably could though. He probably could, do the foot toms and the bass drum and do intricate fucking shredding on the guitar. Why not? So, anyways, Isaac is the drummer for Blood Incantation. He's also the drummer for Wayfarer, and he is also the lead guitar player and singer for Stormkeep. So I'm pretty sure if you guys know extreme metal, you probably are aware of some of those acts because they're some of the more popular acts in the last half decade or so. So we're gonna get Isaac in here and talk to him about all that kind of stuff, like what's going on in his life and how he finds time to sleep. That's the thing I really want to know about. So, Isaac, what's happening, dude?
Not much, man. Just having a nice sunny day here in Colorado, which is
rare.
Yeah. Well, it's nice these winter days. Sometimes it actually gets pretty sunny. So,
you got much snow on the ground right now?
Snow on the ground, but sun is out. So
Okay, cool, man. You are a Colorado boy. You were born and raised there?
Yeah. I was born in Boulder, Colorado, and then have lived around the Denver area my whole life.
Cool. So, are you much, as an aside here, are you much of an outdoors guy? Like, are you a hiker and like trekker or not so much?
I mean, I would say I don't get out there as much as I'd like to because I don't have as much time these days. But I always try to get into the mountains sometimes. But I never really got into like snowboarding or skiing or anything because as a musician, if I like break a limb or something, then I'm
done.
Yeah.
You're done. Exactly. Yeah. I just wonder because I mean of course there's the Cascadian black metal scene and everybody's out in the woods and doing all kind of necromantical spells and conjuring and all that kind of shit. And it's like, but I just wondered because I know you're a very, very busy cat. You got a lot going on, man. I mean, it's we're getting you right before you're about to head out to England, right? Or Europe, or is it just England?
It's actually Europe in general with Enslaved, for Wayfarer, yeah.
Right. That's going to be pretty cool. Is that like the first really big like headlining sort of thing that you've got going on where you've got like a major band that you're headlining for like that? Opening.
Yeah. Wayfarer has not yet done like a support tour like that where we're supporting like a bigger band. And Enslaved is one of our kind of biggest influences, probably even from like when we started the band back in 2012. So like this is a big thing for that band, and especially going to Europe with that sort of thing is a really big thing, and then that really kicks off the year for me because it's just gonna be kind of nonstop for
we'll get into that then a little bit here. I want to back up to, as you know, we had some dialogue back and forth a little bit, and your interest was piqued because I kind of like to do these artists kind of focus where it's not just, hey man, you're promoting the next thing or the next tour and it's a 15-minute blurb. I kind of want to get to know you as a person, have a dialogue and a conversation. So let's take you back. Now I'm gonna pull the old man card here a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
which I always do because I'm an old man. So, but it's funny. I was looking and I was like, I knew you guys were in your 30s, but I thought you were like in your later 30s. You're in your mid 30s, more or less. And so it's weird because my kid is 29. So it's like I could have easily had a kid your age. You know, I got started with a family kind of late. So I'm kind of curious where and what your first kind of memory, and I know it's sort of a tried and true sort of question, but I really think it's kind of important. It's an important marker on how we formulate our tastes and our whole direction from an artistic standpoint. What were the first memories that you have of music and like, you know, bands or artists or things that maybe your parents were listening to or getting into your parents' record collection, things like that? And do you have a specific cool kind of memories that are centered around maybe some of those songs or those artists?
Yeah, well, so my family is extremely musical, and maybe even more than maybe some of your interviews might be. My mom and my dad were in a band together called Heartwings before I was even born, and
neat.
It was this kind of like folky singer-songwritery kind of like, I mean, just very Boulder, Colorado, kind of like acoustic guitars and congas, and like, you know, they would do close harmonies and stuff. And my mom always tells the story because she loves to tell it, which it is a very fascinating story, but she was pretty much 9 months pregnant with me, playing a gig on Pearl Street in Boulder. And apparently this is what she likes to say, is that I was like kicking along with the bass drum which was happening on the
right on.
So she always says, oh, that was his first concert, you know, that he was doing. So I don't remember that, obviously. So
right.
From my memories, you know, I mean, music was such a huge part of growing up, and both of my parents were singers and played guitar. My dad played guitar, and my mom played a little bit of piano and all this. So it was just around a lot, and they would listen to a lot of this kind of like world music and stuff that at the time, you know, I didn't know what different genres were. I was a kid, but like stuff like Lorena McKenna and like Peter Gabriel and Enya and like stuff like that was around a lot. And so, you know, that was just kind of imprinted in my musical landscape. And then same with like my dad was really into prog rock and stuff like the Beatles. And so, you know, some of my earliest memories were some of that music. And then as I got older, you know, and then I started to discover my own musical taste. But those things kind of still stuck around. So like when I was in high school and I was getting into metal, for example, my dad, I think he got me like a Black Sabbath CD, and he was like, "Oh, I saw Black Sabbath back in the day," you know, and so I was that. And then I remember him putting on In the Court of the Crimson King and being like, "Whoa, this is kind of hard." You know, I was like 14, 15, and I was like, there's this like driving guitar thing going on, but also there's all this other stuff happening. And so that was like, that record in particular was actually probably like a really important step for me, because then I kind of had this like, oh, there's like heavy music that has these other things happening.
Right.
And then from there, I mean, it really just kind of sprawled into, you know, I mean, Opeth and, you know, Steven Wilson and Porcupine Tree and all that stuff. And that's where I kind of think I already had like the connection in my brain that was all like a little world, you know, that was
right.
going. So
the genetics were planted, so to speak, in a weird way, that the DNA was planted so that you would go and be pretty adventurous in your musical tastes. I mean, it seems that you are very adventurous. You like a lot of different sort of types of music, from what I gather.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my main projects are metal bands, but I would say like half of my record collection is definitely not metal.
Right.
But I mean, I love a lot of the extreme metal stuff, like black metal, death metal, all this stuff, power metal. Like I saw the Crimson Glory poster. Like I love
fuck.
I
just had Ben Jackson on 2 nights ago.
Oh, nice.
They're coming back. Well, they are back. They dropped a single right before Christmas. New singer, obviously, because Midnight's gone and Todd's doing his thing. Got a pretty good gig with Queensryche, but sounds pretty promising, man. And actually, it's weird. In talking to him, I ended up grabbing. I didn't have this one, which is the one with Wade Black. It's a little more heavy metal, like more European power metal-y sounding as opposed to. So it's a little less proggy, maybe a little more like power metal-y. And then when Ben left, he had this band called Parish.
Oh, okay.
With Dana. It's really cool, dude. It's a little more, maybe a little slightly more. It's like Transcendence, maybe reduced to a little bit more radio friendliness, kind of. So it's not. Look, Transcendence is it's like a mind blowing, all time record. You just don't.
Yeah.
You just don't do that record again. It's almost impossible, right? But yeah, so that's a very cool thing. So you're into that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes. I don't think I have too much of like I don't know, discrimination against certain genres. I don't really think of like, I think when I was younger, I had a little bit more of that, like, oh, I don't listen to that, or there's this and this. But like, I have Willie Nelson records. I have like, Wu-Tang records. I mean, I listen to all kinds of stuff. But like, I think the vast majority of what I listen to is mostly black metal and a lot of prog rock. That's like a real, like, most of my records are in those kind of spots. And so that's kind of going back, to when I first got into metal. That's like, black metal was really the thing that got me interested in it. And I do like a lot of death metal, but I would even say like I don't listen to as much death metal really, because even the black metal, I really just don't go for like the more normal kind of like in the box stuff. I usually find.
Okay, so that's a good question. If I can segue there, what were the bands that, was it the Immortals and the Mayhems and the first wave? Well, actually, that second wave. But I mean, was it the Bathory and the, that kind of stuff that pulled you in, or was it more obscure stuff?
So I mean, like, I think like most people who get into the genre, it definitely starts. It starts with, like, for me, it was, I saw Demon Borgir coming up at that time. It was like 2003, and I was like, getting into heavier music, and that led me down a path, because I heard symphonic Norwegian black metal, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but that sounds like something I want to know about.
Right.
And so it just led me down the path. So then I, of course, read Lords of Chaos and read all those books, and then just found all the different bands. And then, from the main, like you said, like the Immortals and the Mayhem and all that stuff, then it was like next step to me was like all of the really weird bands from Norway, like Dodheimsgard and Arcturus and all of those kind of like left of center, Virus, Vedbundsenda, like all that stuff. And
Thorns, Ulver, stuff like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And that was all stuff that like really interested me. If it was symphonic, if it had electronic elements, if it had these other, strange kind of weird vocals or just, odd time signatures, anything like that. And so that late 90s, early 2000s era, and, stuff like, also on the more melodic side too, like Vindir and, Obtain Enslavement and stuff like that.
Sure.
That was just, that's really like that's where I live, I guess, is like, well, more of that.
Isn't it? It's kind of really interesting now, there's the juxtaposition between you and I of about 25 years roughly, because I'm pushing 60. And when I discovered black metal, it was essentially from reading Kerrang. There's that magazine with, I think it's Varg and Euronymous, I believe, on it. I can't remember who's on it. Is that the one? I think.
I mean, probably Varg, from like the.
It was during the whole murder bullshit and all the crazy weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, and I already had started to dabble in death metal with Death and Deicide and Obituary and stuff like that. But my big thing was, man, this music's killer, but man, these vocals are just awful. Like I could not separate it. And weirdly enough, it was Steven Wilson who got me to reframe my thinking about that, because we were trading a bunch of weird stuff back and forth for several years. So I met Steven in '99 on the Stupid Dream tour. It was their first actual real US tour. They were opening for Gong. I'm sure you've heard of Gong, right?
Oh, I mean, Gong.
Pierre Morlan, right?
I have like 10 Gong records. Yeah, no, I
fucking Pierre Morlan is insane, right? I mean, the dude is just nuts. Magma too, which I've never really become a true Magma nut. They're almost too fucking weird for me, but I can approve. What's that?
Them live?
I haven't. I heard they're insane.
I mean, I will say I love Magma, and when I saw them live, it really made me understand what it's about. But anyways,
yeah. Well, you're gonna hate me for this. There was a festival called Nearfest back in the 2000s, early 2000s. I think almost like 2010. It was like a big festival out here, and I went up. The first time I went was to see Porcupine Tree, where they were headlining for Light Bulb Sun. I think it was Light Bulb Sun. It was right prior to. They had already been courted and signed by Lava, but people didn't know about it until a little bit 6-8 months later. But I went to see him, and that's when Steve was like, "Oh man, you gotta check out Magnum. You gotta check out Magnum." And then they headlined Nearfest like a year or two later, and I went up that day and I left. I just was like, man, I cannot get into this shit. It's too weird. So I need to maybe go back and rediscover that. But so Steve was the reason that I kind of gave death metal another shot, because like I said, I love I love the music in Death. I love the music in Cynic and all the heavy riffage and stuff like that. I just couldn't assimilate to the vocals. But weirdly, right around that time, I want to say 98, 99, 2000, I was super into Frontline Assembly, super into Skinny Puppy, all that techno industrial stuff. Yep. And so he sends me, I can't remember whether he sent me a CDR or something of Blackwater Park, or it might have been Still Life, might have even been My Arms Are Hers. And I'm like, dude, man, this music is just the best. It's so killer. But those vocals, like the harsh vocals, come on. He's like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You love the vocals on Skinny Puppy and you love the processed vocals on Frontline Assembly, but you can't get these vocals. I'm like, oh yeah, I had to rethink it, you know what I mean? Like I had some sort of a weird bias going on, that it was like, well, it's not legit this way because they're just doing that kind of thing, right? Now I kind of prefer those vocals a lot of the time. It's weird. So it's weird how you're
so I mean, just going into that, I think it's like an interesting topic to talk about, because I got into extreme metal when I was very young. So they're like extreme vocals, if they're done correctly, it's more like a texture and it's not forefront thing. And so for me, I think similar to what you're saying, like I think it's harder for a band to mess that up a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but it's sometimes, and also it fits the certain types of music,
right.
Whereas like singing, like melodic singing, can definitely hit something that like I don't necessarily like a little easier, I think, and it's a little bit more like, sometimes I talk about it where it's like the voice is the most like personal instrument,
expressive, yeah.
And the human brain like latches onto that like immediately, as like, that's just what we hear. And so for that to be, something that you aren't familiar with, or not something that you like, it can be very jarring. And I know that's like always my parents, they're always like, the vocals, I can't.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But yeah, like to me, it's like it's this way to convey the intensity of the music
Absolutely.
and the lyrics that would not really work, the other, and some, and to also to say too, there's tons of harsh vocals that I just am not, not a fan of. And it just,
yeah, it doesn't click. It doesn't click. Some vocals just don't click. Like I tried Dodom's Guard way back when, and I was like, man, it's too weird. But this new album, man, the new album is fucking phenomenal. It's so incredible. Like it's like a psychedelic Pink Floyd black metal album. It's so good, right?
Totally.
And then Vicatinic's also on the last what's it called? The Dolda somebody help me out with that. Dolda Oh, it's the one that Hovard is in from Over. I can't remember the damn name of the album, but
oh yeah, I think I saw them talking about this. I haven't listened to
Dolda Ends Novin, I think it is. Yeah, Dolda Verda Ends Novin. That's it.
Nice.
Really cool, man. So it's like you said, once you start to acclimate your brain to it, and you kind of, oftentimes you come around to it. You know what I mean? That's not to say that my 83-year-old father that I share, that lives with me, would ever sit there and go, this stuff's great. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen, But
right.
you mentioned a very pivotal album for me, and probably for most prog guys. And that is what is generally considered the very first prog record in history, which would be, I mean, you could make arguments that Pet Sounds and, Sgt. Pepper's maybe are the first prog albums, but for true prog rock, I think you kind of can pigeonhole the first King Crimson, album in the court. Did you say your dad got that for you, or you just happened upon it?
Well, so my dad had a copy of it when I was younger, and I think it was a combo of the heavy guitars of 21st Century Floyd Man into the "I Talk to the Wind" song. I remember just loving that song, even as a young person. Like I was just taken by the sound and also the juxtaposition. I think that's something that I've always loved in music is, just like really intense, like crazy song, and then really like smooth and slow and melancholy song. And that's been like, I would say probably my musical trajectory kind of mirrors that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't really make records that are only metal the whole time. Like it just doesn't.
Right.
I just don't do that, because to me that's not a musical journey. Like to me, like, there are bands that do that well, and that's totally cool. Like you brought up Deicide, like they're a great example.
Very linear. Obituary.
Exactly.
Obituary, very linear. Yep.
Yeah.
And you know what you're getting with them, and that's what you want. You want
exactly
that, and then you kind of are like, okay, I'm good with that. Enslaved is a great example of a band that is just so dynamic. With there's so many moving parts to what they're creating. They are the quintessential prog black metal band, and they're not even really a black metal band per se anymore, but they still are.
Yeah, I mean, they're an interesting example because I feel like they've really maintained whatever Enslaved is, like that core of what their band is. They've just maintained that for a very long time. And so, they're able to go on these journeys and then bring you back. And then you're like, okay, yeah, we're still here. And I think that's always been something that's interested me, is like using these, it doesn't matter what genre it is. I think I've even heard Steven Wilson say it in interviews, but like, having like different paints in your palette, it's like, you're not like, why would I use one paint the whole time? Like,
right. Exactly.
And so to me, yeah, it's like there's so many different options, even if with just guitar based music. But then once you start getting into other stuff like electronic, and you get, synthesizers and acoustic, world instruments and all this stuff. And it's like, that really interests me to like, dive into those things. And even like my favorite non-metal bands, I would even say like the Beatles are one of my favorite bands of all time. Like that was like a band that I grew up with my dad. And then I had my own kind of experience listening to them as a teenager, like 17, 18. And that was like a really, it just fit perfectly in my musical world, because they don't stay in this one thing. Like for an album, there's like 10 different genres, you know, but it's always the same. You're like, okay, this is always the Beatles. Like you were saying, like how Sgt. Pepper was like kind of like this precursor to prog rock. Like it is kind of this proto prog.
For sure.
And then that's why, like, you know, you get later in the prog thing, and then it just kind of prog becomes a genre, right? Like so now when people say prog, they just think like 70s
Genesis, yes, Crimson, you know, it's that box of bands kind of, right? But there's so much
but what's interesting to me is that whenever you have like the start of a new genre, which is a lot of times a combination of a lot of genres, right? You have all these different bands that sound different, but then after a certain amount of time, then it all starts to sound the same. And so like, you see the same thing with black metal. It's like, you know, the first few black metal bands, I mean, even if you talk about the first wave, but even the second wave, like Dark Throne, Burzum, Mayhem, Emperor, you know, Immortal, those bands don't sound the same. Like you listen to them and they're very different. Like there's a very different template. But like now you fast forward, you know, 30 some years, and you've got the black metal sound, which is just like kind of delineated. So I feel like the same thing happened with prog, where it's like, I mean, you listen to, I mean, Magma is from the same time period as Yes, which is from the same time period as Gong, you know? And
good point. Very good point.
You know, none of those bands really sound the same. But there's like something that, you know, it got, you know, as the 70s went on, and then there's kind of this, you know,
there's the commercialization thing, right? There's that commercial that always hangs over some bands, like, well, how, you know, are we a bedroom band that, you know, plays an occasional gig here and there, or are we actually going to be musicians that can support ourselves with our art? And are we going to have an audience if we don't somehow distill it into the box that the commercialization, i.e. record labels or record companies, need you to be in so that they can sell it, right? There's always that dynamic of, you know, art for art's sake or art for money's sake.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, because I feel like typically that's kind of what happens. Like, so you have this kind of dichotomy of like journalists versus record labels, and who's not in that equation? It's the artist, right? So
exactly.
So journalists are the ones who always come up with these genres. Like, typically, you know, it's not a band saying like, we're progressive rock. It's usually a journalist who
they sound like,
oh, this is a new thing, you know, I have to describe it somehow. So then we have to create this new kind of like idea. And then you've got the record label who utilizes the genre tag and the to sell it to people, because they think that the populace needs to have like
a roadmap,
or like, you know, I feel like a lot of companies just like, they kind of think of people as the lowest common denominator, and they just have to pigeonhole stuff, you know? And so what you get is that you get these two forces just kind of creating these like niches that they're like, okay, we can market this. Okay. I'll put it in the whatever guitar magazine, you know? But the best bands, you know, are those bands, to me, for me personally.
I totally feel you. I know where you're going with this.
The best bands are the ones that just cannot be put in there. Like, those are the bands that like, that will always be like my favorite and like stick with me for my whole life, are the ones that are just, what does this sound like? It's you have to say the band name, you know, like Opeth is a great example. I think, you know, you just say Opeth, it's just Opeth. That's just what it sounds like. You know, there's no You could kind of say, oh, it's kind of this, it's kind of this, it's kind of this, but then after you start using like 10 genre tags, you're like, well,
yeah, you're kind of like, well, then they have their own thing because they've managed to create all those dynamics, right? I mean, a really good example of that, Isaac, and I would be shocked if you didn't know this band and like them a lot, but is the English pop, synth pop band that really was nothing like synth pop by their fifth album, and that was Talk Talk. I mean, Talk transcended every boundary that you could think of. And there's no tag. You're just like, it's Talk Talk, man. That's what it is, right?
They're one of my favorite bands. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Laughing Stock and Spirit of Eden,
fucking
Color,
incredible.
I mean, those are just like some of these albums that it just expands like what you could even imagine like pop music being.
Right.
And, like those are the bands where I'm like, this is really like pushing even just the boundary of like what a genre could be and like what music can do. And then it's really more about then you're like sitting with each of these instruments, and you're just existing with these different players in the album world that you're in, and not thinking about like, oh, I want to listen to this type of thing. It doesn't fit. And that's the part of the thing about modern music listening. That stuff doesn't work for playlists as much,
Exactly.
You can put on like early Talk Talk onto some playlists because actually I was in that's funny you bring that up. I was in the grocery store just yesterday and they were playing It's My Life, which is a great song, great song.
Those two the three early synth pop albums, you almost can't touch them. They're like that. They're right there with Tears for Fears and maybe Depeche Mode as the best of the best, right? But it's brilliant stuff. But it's a lot more categorizable. It's a lot more.
And that's what's so cool about that band is that they start in this way, which also Tears for Fears kind of did a similar trajectory. I remember like just getting really into these records and just thinking like, I wonder if they were kind of in like a not rivalry, but like how the Beatles and the Beach Boys would say how they like a new record, they would put out a new record and they'd be like, oh, we need to step up our game.
Right. We need to top that.
Yeah. And I've always wondered if Talk Talk was like put out Color of Spring and then like Tears for Fears were like, we need to put out something else, and then Seeds of Love. And then like, and then after that Talk Talk was like, well, we're
just going to go full right turn into the Nowheresville, right? And the thing that those last two albums, Laughing Stock and thank you, is that what they explore on those albums is more about what space and silence can do as opposed to what you can do with the actual analog instruments, whether it be voice or piano or synth or whatever. It's more about the spaces in between on those albums than it is about the actual music. When I listen to them, man, those are meditative albums for me. When I get on a long drive, it's almost always one of those two albums that I'm throwing in, and I'm just like, or Beck's Sea Changes, same sort of similar vibe where it's just this. I just want to disconnect with everything but connect with the world around me and the music and feel how it makes me realize I'm human and how I connect to the universe in a weird way. So I'm getting all esoteric and weird there. But
no. I mean, that's totally true. I would say it actually reminds me of like Miles Davis records where it's just like, it's like detached, like the music is just happening and it doesn't have this like riff oriented thing going on. It's very, like you said, it's very in the moment. It's very organic. And I think I remember hearing somewhere that Mark Hollis was just like crazy about like every single sound like had to be perfect and like just, like hours on like one thing. But I mean, those are the records that stick with you because and especially when you have like a moment where you listen to it, maybe in like a specific time, like you said, like on a long drive or like, I remember being with a friend of mine listening to it at like 3 a.m. and just being like, in the silence of the room and just each instrument just kind of popping in and out. And
Yeah, you're in the zone. You're in the zone. Like it just you're locked into that. And I think well, let's back up a little bit because we got super into a cool tangent there, which was awesome. And that's what happens with me. I'm my ADHD starts going, and I start going, yeah, but what about this and what about that? So
totally.
Let's go back to you as a young man, as a young guy. Was the drums the first thing that you picked up, or what? How was that dynamic? What started rolling there?
Well, so just kind of going back to what we were talking about, my dad played guitar and drums. And so as a young man, I was like, I need to be different than my dad. So I started playing bass first, actually.
How about that? That's funny.
And so I played bass for a couple years, and I was getting lessons, actually. And then bit by bit, I started playing on my dad's drum kit, and I'm kind of playing on that. I start kind of messing around on guitar a little bit, and he's like, well, why don't you seem to really want to play the drum set? What if I move it down into the basement where you're, in the house, and that's where your bedroom is, and
you can go crazy, right?
You can go crazy. And I was like, okay, yeah, I would love that. And so I kind of accepted that that's kind of where my trajectory was going. And
how old were you?
So I was about 13, 14.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so we move the drum set down, and then I got like an Epiphone Explorer guitar, and I had, and then what the cool part is, which I think this was a unique thing for me, was that my dad was really into also recording. He was doing sound engineering stuff at like
nice.
And so he actually had like a mixer and a recording setup in my room as a high school student.
Okay.
The drum kit and everything set up so I could record stuff basically all the time. And
wow, that is unique, highly unique. Yeah,
I was able to record like one-man band stuff because growing up in Boulder, Colorado, there really wasn't any
scene
metal people. Like I was pretty one of maybe 5 in the entire city, because everybody in Boulder would be like, oh yeah, I like metal. Like, you like Tool, and stuff like that,
or Metallica, right?
Metallica, or like, it would be like mostly people into jam bands and stuff like that, which I could never really fully like. I always say like, I don't really like jam bands. I like bands that jam,
Yeah.
But anyways.
So how old are you at this? You're in high school or no?
So at that time,
when you start recording one man sort of project?
Yeah, so I was in high school. Yeah, so about a freshman, sophomore in high school, I started recording all these like kind of like little I was really into black metal, and so I was doing all this kind of like black metal stuff at that age. And then it kind of developed, and I would kind of do one little thing here, and I would kind of do like a drone doom thing, and then I would
nice.
Progressive more and more on like a post. I got kind of into like the post rock thing was like kind of time stuff like Godspeed and Sigur Rós and stuff like that. I would get
amazing stuff. Yeah.
And so even at that early age, I was kind of already like switching up genres and doing different things, but I could never really find one thing. But I was just always doing my own band and by myself. And at the end of high school, I found the other metal kids in town, and started a couple of bands, and that's kind of where things started for me now. But yeah, that's kind of like where it kind of all happened. So I was playing guitar and drums,
kind of doing a little bit of everything,
kind of really what I'm doing now, was basically then too. So yeah.
Was the recording setup digital at this point, or was it still analog?
So it was an interesting combo because it was digital, but it was like
an ADAT.
So it was an ADAT cue.
Yeah.
So you had to read it was similar to tape where you have to like see the time, and then if you wanted to punch in, it would be you can't.
Yeah, you just couldn't cut and paste and move stuff around and quantize, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So kind of got me I mean, I will say, like, I've always been comfortable in the studio, and that's kind of where I feel the most comfortable, because I think that was where I really got my, you know, my
Your
stride.
education. Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, on tour, I love being on, you know, tour is cool and I love playing live, but I think every time I get into the studio, that's always kind of my happy place, I guess. Yeah.
You're a super creative person. You like to just generate and experiment, I think is probably a fair statement then.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my favorite part. Yeah. Is just getting.
Well, let me ask you this as an aside here. So you're known as, you know, the BI guy, the Wayfarer guy, the Stormkeep guy, all either death or black metal, all metal, right? Okay. And yes, you've done the Time Wave Zero, which is very experimental. And boy, you poor guys, man. I mean, you just took so much shit. We'll get into that in a minute here, which is just ridiculous. But anyways, should have called it another band, man. I love that stuff. It's like, should have called it another band. It's like, who the fuck are you to tell them what they should and shouldn't do with their band?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'm sure Steven Wilson will tell you all about how
he's been down that road a million times.
How wild the metal fans are. But
yeah. But I guess, where was I going there? Shit, I was going to ask you a question.
You were just saying, like, because I'm mostly doing these metal bands.
Oh yeah. So
yeah, would
it be out of the realms of possibility, and how much interest would you have in doing? Do you know where I'm going?
I kind of know. Yeah, continue.
In like forming your own prog rock band, like just to do something totally indulgent, and you know, not, although you kind of do that already. I mean, let's be honest. There's, you know, I mean, a 22-minute or 21-minute song on, you know, Hidden History is kind of indulgent, just a little.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just curious, or do you fulfill that with BI?
Well, no, it's a good question, because it's something that I think about all the time. I'm always thinking about what's going to be the next thing. You know, I'm never content. I think that's like, I think every artist should not be. You should, you know, like, you really shouldn't be happy with whatever you're doing.
Right.
Then why? I mean, you'll just stop, right? Like, if you're ever like,
well, you plateaued at that point, right?
Exactly. So I would say too, like, I feel like I'm in a good spot in my life right now, where it's like we've got a lot of stuff happening, and I have a lot. I would say now I feel like best, like I have like the tools I've been building from my life to kind of do the things that I've wanted to do for a long time. So saying that, I've kind of had this idea for a long time to do something a little bit different that would be more, not a solo project, but a little bit more like that, where it would kind of incorporate a lot of these different things. So I had this project a while back called Falcon's Eye, which is, I mean, I really only did like this one kind of demo album thing, and I put it on Bandcamp, and that was kind of it. But that was from, what was this, like 2016, and then I put it out like a couple years later, I think. But that's where I started singing like more melodically, and doing like acoustic guitars and synths and stuff. And so that was kind of my first foray into doing this kind of idea.
What was it called again?
It's called Falcon's Eye.
Okay, because that's not in your Metallum thing. So
correct. Yeah, it's kind of like a little side note that a lot of people probably don't know about.
Yeah, interesting.
And so it's kind of like, I would describe it as like a psychedelic neo-folky, you know, it has ambient stuff. But that was like, it was really my first try at it. So I'm not even like, you know, I think it's okay, but it was kind of like like I said, like a little side note. But I've always thought that, you know, I could expand this idea and do something new with it. So, you know, to answer your question, yes, I do think about that a lot. And on the flip side, the new Blood Incantation album, which we haven't announced yet, so I can't really talk too much about it.
Okay.
But what we have announced is that we have a new record coming this year, which that's out there. But I can also tell you that what you're describing also ends up on the new Blood Incantation record.
Ah, nice.
So
I kind of had a feeling it might be going that way a little bit more because you guys are getting more and more. Not that, and I love Starspawn and love Hidden History and all the stuff you've done. I think it's, it's some of the best metal that's kind of happened in the last decade.
Oh, thank you.
But it also seemed like maybe, and you talked about it earlier, like, okay, so when a new Obituary album comes out, do we ever expect it to suddenly sound like Obituary mixed with, Motorhead mixed with Merciful Fate? No, we don't ever expect that. And I don't know that if we got that, if we wouldn't all go, what the fuck are they doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the age-old difficulty of being an artist. If you make the same album over and over again, your fan base is like, what the fuck, man? They're just making the same album over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But the minute you deviate a slight little bit, it's like, what are they doing? They should be calling it a different band. It's not even, it's like, it's unreal. You know what I mean? It's just, and look, I'm a guitarist. I write. I've played in bands and sang, and so I get it. There's this weird, like you said, you're the last guy in the equation. It's the fan base and what they want and what they think they should be getting, and the record label and what they're trying to pigeonhole down your throat or whatever. And you guys are the guys going, what the fuck, man? Like,
well, and to that point, Blood Incantation is in a very unique position that our record label and our management are both just like, do what you guys do. And we're very lucky that way. That, I mean, we have very good people working for us. So when we presented Time Wave Zero, for example, we thought we were going to be like, hey, we'll put it out ourselves. Like, we don't
right.
No big deal. And we showed it to Century Media and to Philip, who I speak to on a regular basis there. To his credit, he was like, I want Century Media to do this. He was like, I think it's very good and I want to do it. And we were like, okay. And he's like, well, let's say it's an EP. Let's not say it's an album. Let's say it's an EP, and then that
lessens the blow just a tiny little bit.
And then I think he had only heard the demo version of it, and then we finished the record, and we turned it in, and he was like, "This is kind of more like an album." And we were like,
"It is,
yeah, you're right. You're right. It is." I mean, if you look at it in any kind of scope of like other bands who've done that, it's an album, it's
Phaedra or it's Stratosphere or whatever, right? Yeah,
which are some of my favorite records, and I've been listening to those records since I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, like Tangerine Dream.
So forget Paul. I know my guy now for Tangerine Dream. I've got my guy.
I will say it's interesting that you say that you made him come around to some of the other stuff. What I know that he doesn't go for as much.
Well, no, I don't think I did make him come around. Let me just back up. I said I need to make you come around to some of that stuff. Well, I mean, I stopped.
He did.
Huh?
So
did he? Okay.
Like, he doesn't just listen to the first four. I mean, I think.
Okay.
Force Majeure was actually one that he didn't maybe mess with as much. But I remember.
Love it.
I think I got it on tape first, and then I got it on record later. But when I had it on tape, and I had a tape player in my car, and I would just play it over and over again, and
force him to listen to it. Yeah.
Well, and I would be like, Paul, like, dude, this album is like so good, and he'd be like, yeah, no, it's cool. And then I think I remember it was like a little bit later, he was like, yeah, it really is actually really good. It's just it's very different because it's Tangerine Dream going a little bit more rock.
Right. Yep.
I personally, I'm a drummer. So like, I was like, Tangerine Dream with drums. Sign me up.
I'm down. Yeah. I'm signed up. Sign me up. Yeah.
And then like I think it's the last track or the second to last track on that record is like straight up one of my favorite Tangerine Dream tracks of all time.
Through Metamorphic Rock,
it's like the really like kind of like churning electronic.
Oh, it's got the chuggy one, like that's Force Majeure, I believe. That it's interesting. I don't know. Do you know the movie Thief with James Caan?
Yes.
So it's in there. That part of that's in there. Yeah. And they do that whole soundtrack, which is amazing, man. I mean, they've done so many killer, like the Keep and
Yeah.
The Keep one is so cool.
Yeah, soundtracks are so good. But to get back to what you're saying,
sorry.
Is force majeure then became this huge template and inspiration for the new album because we recorded at Hansa Studios where they recorded that record
in Germany. Wow.
Germany and Berlin, and we were able to. This is the craziest part, is that we were able to convince our record label to spend the money to get us to Berlin,
right?
Live there for a month, record at Hansa Studios where David Bowie and Brian Eno and Tangerine Dream and all these formative, very important.
Marillion did some albums.
Oh, dude, one of my favorite bands.
Oh man, dude, we gotta hang. We're gonna do something in the future when you have like a small bit of time, because some of my favorite bands. Marillion is my favorite, probably my top 5 favorite bands of all time.
They're up there for me. I mean, I would say that's kind of like this perfect nexus of a lot of stuff I like. But yeah, so they recorded there, and all these bands that were just like really important to us.
Yes.
Not metal bands, and I think that was kind of like our big. We're like, we want to go to this place, and it was actually by direction of our producer Arthur Rizik, and because he had just done a Creator record there. And he just kind of joked with us like, oh, you guys should just like come record at Hansa Studios in Berlin. That would be so funny. Haha.
And you're like, yeah, but right.
Do not joke about this with Blood Incantation because we are going to do it, And so we convinced our record label to have us do that. And, microphones that were used on Force Majeure, on Tangerine Dream were used on our record. That's
cool.
There's a piano that David Bowie played that is on our album, like a grand.
Like in your wildest dreams, would you have ever thought something like that would ever happen? Right?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think I would have even thought to even imagine that, and it just kind of all happened, and we were just there living in Berlin, and just like, wow.
When were you over? Can I ask when you were over there?
Yeah. So it was in July of last year.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was coming up on, it's like over half a year ago, and the new record is coming. It will be announced sometime in the next couple months, and then it will come out this year. So I can say that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was
so killer, dude. That's
perfect,
incredible.
Perfect environment to record this record. That was, and what I can say about it is that it is a combination of that experimentalism of Time Wave Zero for us, at least. That was like, that was us stretching, because it's all 4 members just stretching our kind of other thing.
Right.
And as far as Hidden History went, this goes further, right?
Okay.
For us. So it's really a culmination of those things. And what getting back to what you were saying about how, metalheads and fans in general, it's not just metalheads. I mean, we have to be honest.
All of us do it. Yep.
Of everything. It's not just music. It's movies and comics and
sure. Yeah.
Fans just get really attached to things, and they think that they own them.
Whatever.
Yep. As a musician, I think, you kind of have a different perspective on that. Sometimes you're like, I don't agree with this, but I respect you for doing it.
Well, it's like this. When you guys create this stuff, they're your babies, and then you put it out in the universe, and you really can't control what's going to happen from that point on, right? And and in a weird way, maybe you really wouldn't want to, because if you were kind of controlling it, a lot of the times that's when it becomes sort of the cookie cutter. Let's just put out the last album with a few changed lyrics and some melody changes, and it'll sell like crazy, and we can go buy houses and do all that stuff. And that's not really what a true artist does.
Yeah.
They create in here and from here and put it out there and go, okay, well, now I'm going to take that leap of faith and put it out there and hope someone digs it or someone enjoys it. And if they don't, at least I know I'm satisfied with it. At least I know I put everything I had into it.
Yeah.
and I'm cool with it, right? I mean, Steven, a good example of that, you know, he always kind of wrote for himself as far as what he was doing, whether it be Porcupine Tree or solo or No Man. We were talking about Talk. Do you know the No Man stuff?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan. I mean,
Ah.
getting too crazy about it, like I would probably say that Steven Wilson is like one of my biggest inspirations. And so No Man, his solo stuff, Blackfield, you know.
This is what we're going to talk about,
Oh,
hopefully.
nice.
Just got that in. But this is some of the most brilliant music you're ever going to hear, man.
And like you said, very Talk inspired.
Very much, yep.
Yeah. Actually, I listened to the album years a lot because it's just wild to hear.
Yeah.
Encyclopedic knowledge of all this stuff.
Have you met him? You haven't met him because I know you guys were trying to work with him on something, right? Like back for Time Wave, you were going to try to get something together on.
We did
5.1.
Our team reached out to him. I think he was busy doing the new Porcupine Tree album at the time.
Okay, yeah.
I have met him once, and actually this is a funny story, and I don't know if he would even remember this, which is I haven't met him since, but I was 17 at the time, and Porcupine Tree played at the Fox Theater in Boulder.
Yep. Right.
And it was a 21 and up show, but my parents, I've actually gotten them kind of into his music too.
Okay, cool.
They're into prog rock, and they're into, you know, some of that stuff. So I got my stepmom and my biological mom.
Nice.
They both came with me and helped me. Basically, I was like, if I'm with my parents, can I get in? So the people at the theater said, yeah, okay, you're with your parents, like, figure it out. So my stepmom actually, it was a school night. I remember this because I was in high school, and I was like, I want to try to meet him, you know, and my stepmom, Kitty, was like, okay, I'll stay here with you. I know it's a school night, but this is a big deal for you because
super cool.
I mean, like basically at that time, I was like really into metal, but Porcupine Tree was the band that really expanded me, you know, along with Crimson and Opeth. It was like Porcupine Tree was like, he was talking about in interviews at that time about music that I liked, like Sun, Suga and stuff.
Yeah.
And then being like, but I'm doing this other thing. And so that always interested me. So, you know, I'm at the show. They were great. And it was right after the Fear of the Blank Planet record, which is still one of my all-time favorite records. And so now we're waiting outside, and Steven Wilson came by, and I was like, hey, you know, can I have you sign something? I said, I need to tell you something. He's like, what? And I'm like, what? You're one of my biggest inspirations, like one of my biggest musical inspirations. He's like, how old are you? And I was like, 17. He's like, isn't it a 21 plus like thing? Like,
what are you doing here?
I was like, I'm with my parents. Like, you know, I won't bother you too much.
Yeah.
But he was really nice about it, and he signed like my ticket stub and everything. And even since then, you know, it's like I've never met him again, but like, you know, I mean, every new record, I'm like always, you know, checking out what he's up to, and you know, so
I'll see what I can do about getting you in touch with him, just between you and me, and everybody that's watching. But we'll see what happens there. See, because I go way back, dude. I go back to the '99 thing, and then I actually was the guy that started through their manager. I was the guy that started the whole global Porcupine Tree street team thing.
Oh wow!
So I acquired all the people throughout the U.S. and even in Europe to do all the promo stuff. And so I've got like some wicked cool things. And, you know, I mean, it sounds weird, and I'm not doing it fanboyish, because there was a time probably where somebody would have said, Jeff's the ultimate fanboy. You know, he's the ultimate fanboy. And they wouldn't have been that wrong. But we kind of developed a more like a friendship as opposed to just like fan and, you know, wanker dude that's just like, oh my God, you know, that kind of thing, right? I had that moment with Geddy and Alex, because Rush is my favorite band of all time. Bar none, not even close. They are the gods of gods. And I got to meet Geddy and Alex in 2007, and I still like look at the pictures and go, did that really happen? Huh?
When you were 7?
No.
Oh.
2007. 2007.
Oh,
No, I was, yeah. I was like, and it's funny because in 1978, when Hemispheres came out, which is when I discovered Rush, I was in the Kiss zone, right? And I discovered them with that album, and it's my favorite album of all time, Hemispheres. It's just, that's it. That's the album. But if you'd have told me at 13, hey, one day down the road, you're going to meet these guys, and, you know, it was like 5 minutes, Isaac. It was like very quick. But if you'd have told me that, I'd have been like, you're out of your fucking mind, man. Those guys don't even live on this planet. They're like on some, you know, Mount Olympus somewhere, you know, to take from the song. But so it's kind of cool. And that's really neat that you got to meet him. He's a good dude, man. He's a, you know, it was weirder in the beginning. It was a little more easier because back in 99, 2000, when they were this, nobody really knew him over here in the States. I got to meet him, or got to kind of connect with him through the Fish connection. Fish being obviously the singer from Marillion, the first 4 albums.
Right.
And so I knew Fish a little bit, and then it kind of interconnected that way. And so my experience with it is a little less fanboyish now, you know, when I think about it. So, but it's cool when you meet these guys and they're just normal dudes, and they're just, and you know, in metal, you know as well as I do that in metal, you most metal guys are the coolest guys ever. You know what I mean? It's like you can meet some pop dudes that are a little full of themselves, and maybe some of the giant bands, but even Geddy and Alex were like the kindest, nicest dudes. Like, it's like, you know, so it's a very cool experience. But so let me get real quick, let's tie in the high school thing into where you're at with your bands then. So you're learning all these instruments, you're actually recording in your basement with this setup, and how, I'm assuming, what year is this? Do you have an idea roughly?
Yeah, so like 2004, kind of that time, because I started high school in 2003, and then I graduated in 2007.
Okay.
So that was kind of that time period, and that's when my dad, I mean, he had his like recording set up in there, and I would just make stuff, and then after that, I got my own little Tascam 4-track.
Right. Yep.
Like, and I actually still have it, and I would just record stuff, and I would do, you know, flip the tape and record stuff backwards, and just, you know, fun stuff. So I learned.
Was that an analog one?
Yep.
So you were bouncing tracks and stuff too, probably. Yeah. I have my old Fostex somewhere. Don't even know where the hell it's at. It's in a box somewhere. Which is, you know, that's a whole nother discussion, talking about that technology to where we are now. That could be hours.
Well, so yeah, I mean, you know, that I think led the groundwork for where I would go. And then because I could play drums, right? Pretty much everyone needs a drummer. No one needs a
that's true. That's true.
Guitarist, you know, everyone plays guitar, but that's why I've ended up like Wayfarer and Blood Incantation playing drums, because it was just like, you know, I know the material and I know how to push that. And like, I always tell people, like, I don't think of myself as necessarily like a drummer or a guitarist. I think myself more like a musician and a songwriter. And then I use those instruments to kind of do that. So even in the band, for example, Wayfair, like, I'm not a primary writer in that band, but I do help with a lot of the arranging of the music. And so that's kind of like where I kind of come in, and like, you know, that's where I think my strengths are. So even like, you know, I wouldn't even say that I'm like, you know, I'm not like the best drummer in the world or anything, but like, you know, I can't do some of the things some of these guys can do out there, but like, I understand what serves the song, I guess, is like kind of, that's more of like where I would say my strength comes from. And I think that even goes back from, you know, back when I was younger and just recording everything just myself. It's like you're not doing it as, oh, well, I'm the drummer, so I need to show off and do a fill here.
Right.
Whatever. It's more about like, what's the feeling of like, what does the riff want, or what does the song want, and what's gonna push the song forward and make it feel complete. So, you know, fast forwarding now, you know, like with Blood Incantation, I do write some of the music, and so it's like Paul and I are kind of like the main songwriters,
Mm-hmm.
and then we still co-arrange, you know,
Right.
a lot of the stuff. Like I kind of joke it's kind of like a Lennon-McCartney thing going on in the band. But
hey, someone here, I just wanted to show you what a nerd I am here. Somebody brought up, do it, Jeff, get a Jester tattoo. All right. Do I have to show you guys? You'll recognize that probably, right?
It's hard on the phone here. I'm having a hard time.
So it's the Jester that he knows.
Oh, it
you
is.
know. He knows you know the artwork of He Knows You Know, pulling the face off. So there you go.
Yeah.
That'll show you what a nerdy fanboy I am of Marillion. Nice. So that was for you, Johnny. There you go. So how then, we're at 2007-ish, 2008. Did you go to college after high school, or did you do, what'd you end up doing then? And then how, take me into meeting Paul, because Paul's from Portland area, I believe, right? Or Oregon? Salem. So he comes into and what are you doing in that interim as far as creating bands or creating some sort of artistic space for yourself while you're doing either school or working or whatever?
Yeah, so right out of high school, I went and had a year in Durango, going to Fort Lewis. So I was there for a year, and that was kind of tough because it's like a very isolated place. And but sorry, actually, I gotta backtrack a second. So I actually started a band right at the end of high school called Sentimani, and it was really like I was just the drummer, you know. It was just like, okay, this is kind of extreme metal X, you know. It was very like a young person's band where it's like your first band and you're just kind of like mixing everything together, and it was just whatever. But that was with this guy James Hansen, who I am still playing with in Wayfarer and Stormkeep. He is my longest friend and bandmate. And so that started kind of right at the end of high school. But then I go to Fort Lewis and Durango, so I'm away from them, and I'm trying to figure myself out. You know, being 18, it's kind of that time where you're like, okay, I'm gonna experiment with LSD, or I'm gonna, you know,
sure, you're figuring things out.
Try to play some other type of music, or I'm gonna listen to these new things. And I found a lot of new stuff, like, you know, I discovered stuff like My Bloody Valentine, like shoegaze stuff. A lot of like the left of center music that I wasn't aware of in high school because I was more of a metalhead. I just like really expanded a lot of my horizons. I mean, you know, I knew Pink Floyd, but then I finally heard Piper at the Gates of Dawn for the first time.
Yeah,
that was a huge one. Anyway, so that's kind of the beginning of college, and then I moved back. You know, I was like, oh, this is too isolating. This isn't really my style down here. There's not really a metal scene. There's not really like a different music scene. It's really like a lot of everyone who plays music in Durango is like into jam bands or like reggae or something.
Hippie hangout stuff. Yeah, right.
Totally. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to come back to Denver. And so I went to Metropolitan State University up here in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my degree in history and got my teaching license, basically. So that was like my backup plan to.
I remember you were teaching in the early days of that was one thing that I was like, I got to ask him about the teaching gig. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I went to school for. I was like, okay, well, this is going to be my plan B, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I can have summers off, you know, or I can, I'll figure it out. So I went back to school. You know, I was doing that.
Sure.
And while I was doing that, I started some other projects, and I was doing. Basically, I was in Sentimani still. That was from high school, and we were still kind of jamming, and we did a couple recordings, and we would play shows locally. And that was, you know, and it started incorporating keyboards and all these other things. But then I started, my ex-girlfriend and I started this project called Stoic Dissension, where I was playing guitar finally. And that was my first time being a song, like the primary songwriter in a band.
Right.
That was in like 2009, 10 was when that
Right.
started. And so it was kind of a mixture of black metal, funeral doom, and then it had some prog elements, and it had some post-rock elements, and it had all this kind of stuff. But again, like a young person, you're just kind of like, you're trying to figure out what your voice
feeling things out. You're feeling things out. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, you know, as an early songwriter, I was kind of still like, you know, finding my footing and discovering that stuff, but still in school and really like, you know, I remember I was actually talking about this the other day. Just like there's that time that time of my life was very crazy because it was just like multiple bands, full-time job, and going to school. And I was like, you know, working at a grocery store, stocking shelves and stuff, you know, basically.
Yeah.
And so it was like not a free moment, you know, it was just always doing something, always busy. And then so Stoic Dissension, my band, at the time, played a show at the Blastomat, which is this kind of DIY venue here in Denver. We played the show with this band called Velnius, who Paul and Jeff were in at the time.
Yep.
And so we played the show, and Paul was like, he messaged both me and Kelly, because Kelly was also playing. Oh, here's my cat. He's trying to say hi.
That's cool.
Anyways.
Yeah,
So Paul messaged Kelly and I being like, hey, you guys had some really cool guitar harmonies going on after, like, you know, had met at the show, and, you know, kind of similar genre, like, you know, Velnius has these like doomy black metal things.
Yep. I've heard them. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, you know, one of you down to jam? Because like I really like the guitar harmonies you guys had. And I was like, yes, I would love to do that. And, you know, hit him up, and I was like, yeah, like, let's jam sometime. Like, I really like your style. I really like what's going on. Like, let's see what happens. And actually our first project together was us playing guitar, and we did this project called Abysmal Dimensions, which is like funeral doom. And it's just me and him playing guitar, and then this guy James playing bass, and then Andrew from Velnius playing drums. And so we did like a demo, and he just thought of me as a drum, or as a guitarist.
Yeah, interesting.
And then I showed him Sentimani's first album that we had recorded, which was really the first time I had my drums like really like professionally done.
Right.
And he heard the double bass and the blast beats and all that stuff, and he was like, "Whoa! Like you play drums, like metal drums, like that? Like
what the fuck, dude? Holding out on me."
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know. I just, you know, like I don't. Like I said, I don't think of myself as a drummer or guitarist. I just I play music. Like it was whatever.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So he was like, I've always wanted to do like a death metal band that's like weirder, you know, that's not just like cookie cutter or whatever. And he's like, I've always wanted to do something like that. And I was like, yeah, I like death. And I was like, I like Obituary. I like the weirder stuff. And you know who I really like? I really like this band Gorguts. And he was like, I'd never heard of that band.
Yeah. Really?
He had heard the first record, I think. He had heard Considered Dead at the time.
Okay.
But I showed him Obscura, and I was like, before I met him, I was like, this is the type of death metal I like. Like,
yeah, the weird, the totally dissonant, weird, angular bullshit that's like out there, you know. And I mean, you can't deny it. I know it. Maybe I don't want to ruffle your feathers a little bit, but you can't deny the Morbid Angel thing. It's there. I mean, it's there. It's the Trey. The Trey vibe is.
Oh, I mean, Morbid Angel is Blood Incantation's favorite band. 100%. Yeah. That is to me, like, they're the single biggest influence on Blood Incantation. Probably. Right. If I had to pick one, it would be. And if it was two, it would be like Morbid Angel and Pink Floyd. That would be like.
Yeah.
What that. Anyways, so that's really where we started, kind of like, okay, well, let's try to do something like this. And so it started with me and him you know, just jamming in my basement, playing these kind of death metal riffs. And at the same time, we would just like, me and him would just do, oh, let's do like a little black metal thing. We would do like a black metal tape, and then we would do different things, you know, and like mess
He's
around.
living there. He's living there now, or no?
So he was living in Boulder, and I was living in like the Westminster area at the same
Okay.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So he would come over to my house with his like amp, you know, and he would come and we would hang out in the basement and like just jam.
This is when you're still with the parents?
No.
Oh, you're out on your own now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So after, as soon as I got to college, I was just, you know, living on my own and doing my own thing. So I was living with my girlfriend at the time and a friend of mine, and all of the bands would practice in the basement of our house. That was
so
like,
you had the place.
we had the place, and it was, you know, the basement was kind of weird. It was it was very unfinished, and there was like bad electrical in there. But yeah, we would just like, okay, let's, you know, every band, it was like every night there was like some loud
Jams going on. Nice.
But Paul and I we would do like, you know, guitar loops and just kind of do some kind of like Frippinino type of, we called it.
Oh, yeah.
Faulk and Riedel, you know, and it's like, you know, stuff like that. And
just using like looping pedals and things like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, because we were both, and that's where we already were kind of talking like, oh, you like ambient, I like ambient. Oh, you like prog?
Yeah.
There's this 70s krautrock. Here's this, you know, even from the earliest days, you know, we were both very into all these kind of different things. And like, you know, it was like doom metal, black metal, death metal, heavy metal, you know, electronic music and all this stuff. So then we finally, you know, I think we got Morris in the band, like, you know, shortly after.
Where did he come from? Was he a scene guy, or how did you know him?
So he was in Boulder. So Paul was living in Boulder at the time. Mm-hmm. I was living, you know, in the burbs basically. And Morris was at a party. This is the story I've heard. Morris was at a party that Jeff and Paul were at. And Morris was like wearing a death shirt or something.
Okay.
But he was like an indie musician. He was playing in kind of these indie rock bands and playing more like that type of stuff, post-punk and some of that stuff. And so that's where he was into some metal, but he was like in these bands. But then Paul met him and was like, I met this dude with the death shirt, and he like an Iron Maiden thing, and like, you know, having that connection and being like, I'm looking for a guitarist that can like really rip with these like crazy riffs. And he was like, I'm going to introduce him to you, Isaac. I'm going to come to the Stoic Dissension show that you guys are playing, and I'm going to introduce you. And I was like, okay, no problem, man, whatever. And so we met, and I was like, okay. And then it was the three of us, and then we started jamming, the three of us. And then, so that's where we recorded like the first demos, and the first EP was really in that time period, in that like 2013, 2012, 2013. It was like when we were figuring it out.
Right.
And then we recorded the EP, and then that was just like a complete shit show of like the recording process, and just like, you know, the guy held like the tracks hostage and stuff, and it was
okay. So we're talking about interdimensional here.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So tell me the little story about that, because I wasn't aware there was weirdness behind that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I won't get too crazy. I won't get too into.
Yeah, I don't want to get you into legal.
I'm not
trouble,
gonna get like, yeah. I don't want to like, you know, start
facilitate a lawsuit here, right?
But I can tell you that the person who did the recording was not a professional. You know, he was like a musician guy in the scene, a friend,
right,
who records his own band, and was like, oh, I'll record you for like, you know, cheaper. And we were like, okay, well, we're like this little demo band, like,
you're green, you're very green, right?
Now we don't know the ins and outs, and but we're also broke, you know, like,
yeah, of course, yep.
And paycheck to paycheck, you know, student, you know, eating whatever, you know,
Yeah, and you're like, hey man, if you can help us out, like that's what the whole scene's about, right? Help us out, we'll help you out, whatever, play some shows or something. Yeah, normal stuff, right?
And it wasn't like he had like a studio, it wasn't. So just to caveat, just getting in there. So we got in there, and I think my first red flag was that he was taking like massive bong rips for every session. And
I was just stoned out of his mind.
I don't know. And so we recorded the tracks, and we were like, okay, this is cool. And I remember we had to send, because we got Damon. I don't know if you know the band Stargazer or Mournful Congregation.
Yep. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Damon, great friend of ours, he played bass on the first EP. And so for us to get him to play bass, we were like, okay, we need at least the basic tracks. It doesn't have to be mixed, but we need like them to be in time. And so we were like, we got the track, or at least like, these bounces from the producer, and like each track was like one beat off or something. It was like this weird thing where you're like, I can't even listen to it. It's so like, did we record it that bad? Like we were like, is this like, this is so weird. Like the drums are like one beat off the whole time. Like,
so it's lagging the whole way.
And what happened was that he just dragged it accidentally, didn't listen to it, and just, so stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it was just like months and months of this, like back and forth of it. Okay, that didn't work. Hey man, and he's like, okay, I got to go back and fix it and whatever. We're like, okay, cool. And so then we're trying to mix it. Now the bass is recorded. Now we're trying to mix it. And we would go over there, and I just remember just being like, dude, this song sounds different than the other song. Like the kick drum sounds different for each song. Like, why does the kick drum sound different for each song? Like weird stuff like that.
And this was digital, right? It
was all digital. Yeah.
So he just didn't know what he was doing, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we get to, and this is where it got a little hairy, was he gave us what he had, and we had Dark Descent Records lined up because we had the demos, and Matt from Dark Descent was like, okay, I'm interested in putting something out with you guys. We give him the finished product, and Matt's like, I can't put this out, man. Like every song sounds different. The recording is weird. Like this isn't professional,
Yeah.
And we were like, we know, like, honestly, I know, like I've done enough recording in my life.
Yeah.
This isn't really what it should be. And so we had to kind of go back to the guy and be like, hey man, like we need you to send us the tracks because we need someone else to finish it.
Yeah. We need to remix it.
And we tried to be nice about it and be like, oh man, the record label, or whatever. And, like, sorry, like we appreciate everything you've done. And,
had you paid him anything at that point?
So we had already paid him, but then he was wanting more for
of course. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
And then we were like, hey man, like, and we were kind of like, hey, like we'll pay you this much because it's not actually done. And all the time that you spent was a lot of, I would say 90% was him fixing mistakes he had made.
Yeah, so he should have done it for nothing, really.
So really then okay, so then you're paying for someone to, anyways. So then he came back and was like, basically, I'm not giving you the tracks unless you pay me this much, basically.
Oh.
And so we were like, again, tried to kind of, hey, can we make a compromise here? We'll pay you X amount.
Right.
We understand you put in a lot of work, maybe we can work something out. And he was like, nope. Basically, screw you, pay me. That's sort of thing. So we had to get the tracks from him. It was this whole weird thing. We had to pay.
You have to get a lawyer involved?
We didn't. I mean, we're also young and we were just
broke,
we just need the tracks. Like, let's just get them. Let's just pay the money. So I think the three of us, we pulled together, Morris, Paul, and I, we pulled together the money, and bought the stuff from him, and then we ended up sending it to this guy Damien
From Horrendous.
Yeah.
Love Damien, man. What a cool guy.
He was able to fix the tracks. However, and this is my personal problem with the recording, and that's just my own thing, is that when the first guy was recording it and doing it, he took the acoustic recording of the drums and then he sound replaced all of the toms and the
with samples.
But not ask him to do. And then when he sent the tracks, the real drums were gone, like samples, and then the overheads, the cymbals.
Yeah.
But Damien only had that to work with, and so it wasn't to a click too. So it was like and like the velocity was really weird, and
yeah.
So I don't even really think of it as like my drums on that record. It's like this kind of weird thing. So anyways, so that's why that happened and why.
Okay.
No, I'm sure.
Oh, I lost you there for a sec. You're back.
So that's why, like, you know, if people ask me about that, I'll always just kind of be like, that demo.
Not a good vibe on that.
It's hard for me to listen to.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't sound right. But,
well, how did you get tied in with Matt at Dark Descent then? Did you know him from the scene or what?
Yeah, so I knew him from playing around in Stoic Ascension and playing at Fest. He would do his little pop-up here because he's in Colorado.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we would run into each other, and you know, I always kind of assumed like my bands were not quite like extreme or like on the right extreme level for him. But when Blood Incantation started, that really was more in what he was doing at the time.
Right.
We would send him like demos, and we would see him at shows, and he'd be like, "Hey man, you know, what do you want to do it?"
Are you guys still tied in with him then now, or is that contract run its course?
So we are still working with him. He's doing represses, you know, he'll do represses, Starspawn and Hidden History. Even though Century Media, they'll do their versions too in Europe and stuff.
Right.
But we had such a good relationship with him. And then there was a time at which we were like, we want to grow and we want to go to a bigger label, but we want to like kind of keep that relationship. And he was actually really cool about building that and being like, hey, like, yeah, no big deal. Like, let's work, you know, I can still put out these records, you know, that you had. And then, you know, he understands that the volume that we were wanting to go towards.
Yeah.
It's hard for him as like a really like a one-man label.
One-man operation. Yeah. Yeah.
To help him, but you know, it's
but he respects you guys as artists, as friends, to kind of let you do what you need to do to elevate your profile. Yeah.
Exactly. No, and he was actually really great about that, and just like trying to allow the band to do what it needs to do to expand, you know. And we also figured too, it's like, you know, Time Wave Zero on Dark Descent might even get more hate. Who knows, you know? But
really, is it possible to get more hate for that poor album? I mean, yeah. Hey, so so you're doing BI then, and then Jeff kind of, how do you bring Jeff in? Because Jeff knew Paul already, right? Obviously,
right? Yeah. So Jeff was in Vilnius also, right. And he it's kind of funny. Like Jeff joined Spectral Voice first, and more joined Blood Incantation first, and then they kind of both joined.
Cross paths, yeah.
Always get asked, they're like, "Oh wait, aren't you in Spectral Voice?" I'm like, "No, easy confusing thing there, but I'm the only guy in Blood Incantation
that's not in that." Yeah. Which, by the way, that new album came out. It's fucking it's so good, man. So good.
Yeah.
And we've been waiting for it for a while. Those of us that dig that, we've been waiting a long time. But you played with Eli though somewhere, right?
Well, so this is where it gets all, you know,
like with Abysmal, right? Or no?
So I actually played drums at the first Spectral Voice practice that we really started the band.
Okay.
I played drums and Eli was playing guitar. And
that's right. He plays guitar.
I was like, you know what? I think I'm too busy. That's actually what
Yeah, too much going on.
like, I'm in too many bands. This is cool. You guys should do it. I think you guys should just do this. And so Eli switched to playing drums, but he wrote a lot of the guitar with Paul.
Okay.
And he joined Abysmal Dimensions after Andrew from Belnius left Abysmal Dimensions. And so we played together in that. But yeah, Eli and I, it's interesting. I think we come from very different kind of musical worlds, but we're both very, we're both drummers and guitarists, and we write music, and we kind of have these different hats that we wear or whatever. And so yeah, so it's cool, but we've always kind of been on the he's got a very specific thing that he's really into, and so yeah, like Black Curse. I think I saw someone commenting.
Yeah, they're asking if you're not in that. It's just
no, never have been. But massive support to those guys. Like
killer band. Now Eli's actually the front man and the guitarist for Black Curse, I believe.
Well, and so that's kind of the funny thing is like Black Curse for him was kind of Stormkeep for me. We each kind of did this thing where we were like, I'm gonna kind of be the front man and do this thing. And they're both kind of more black metal, but we have a very different kind of interpretation of black metal. Like he's very into the catharsis and the very like, Dark Throne, but then like war metal and kind of that stuff. And I'm much more into like the very melodic.
You're into the melodic Emperor sort of vibe. Yeah. The enslaved sort of thing. Yeah. And, I guess that, a good time to ask this question. So, I mean, like, dude, how do you literally fucking figure out what you're doing from day to day? Like, I get it that some of these bands are not like constant going concerns in terms of you're not rehearsing with every band like 3 nights a week or something where you go to BI practice and then after that you go to Wayfarer practice and then you write Stormkeep. I mean, you'd go out of your mind. You couldn't do it, right? But how do you figure out how to channel your energies where, when, and how, and what material is going to go? You said you're not a writer for Wayfarer so much, more an arranger. In BI, you are a writer, a co-writer with Paul mainly. And then with Stormkeep, you're the primary writer, I believe, right? So how do you compartmentalize all that shit, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of ask myself that all the time.
One of the things that I think I can help you answer is, you're in your mid-30s. You're not in your late 50s. I can tell you that right now.
Yes. No, I mean, I will say I'm definitely at that perfect time in my life where I have the energy.
The commitment.
But also, I'm very fortunate that music is my job now.
Right. When did you quit teaching?
So I quit teaching right at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
Basically, once COVID hit, and I was teaching pretty much after. It was like very soon after college. I got into substitute teaching, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this while I do the music thing. Worked out really nice because for touring I could just be like, I'm leaving and I'm a substitute teacher, so when I come back I can just take jobs. And
right, exactly. That's a perfect situation. Yeah,
so that was like a really nice like combo. But once COVID hit, I was like, okay, well, right now, like, substitutes aren't as necessary because if a teacher's sick, they're still just working from home.
Yeah.
So it was, a little bit harder to find a job anyways. And then I was just kind of like, well, right up to then was really when, that's when Hidden History came out. And that's when Blood Incantation was kind of
start making some money
doing it. Yeah. And doing it in a way that was like, really like, like financially successful and was supporting the band and supporting us. And I was like, well, why don't I just try to see how this music thing will work and just like really roll with it and see how it goes. And so far, I haven't had another job since then, besides music. And, every day I'm like, is it is it going to be time to go back? But
well, and you also, it might be a good place to add that you have a supportive partner, I believe, right? I mean, she's on board, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So Katie, my
that's
fiance,
huge, right?
We just got engaged last year, and yeah,
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. She's been extremely supportive, and that is a huge part too. Is that she understands the lifestyle? You know, she's very supportive of me going on tour, and she knows that that's how I make my money, and so you know, and just you know, she knew me before, like basically before she knew about the bands thing.
Okay, yeah,
already like okay, like you know. That's cool. She wasn't like a fan first, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
So, you know, we have a good thing there. And then she, you know, I'm very supportive of her job and all that stuff. And so, you know, that is a huge part is like, you know, I think people who don't have that, I know that, I mean, I've even had bandmates where it's like, you know, having somebody who's like, I don't want you to leave on tour or do this sort of thing. And it is tough. And it's, you know, and no judgment there because it's not for everybody, you know, and I know that even for people I knew that were in the bands, they were like, oh, you know what, this isn't this touring lifestyle. You know, I'm a homebody and I want to start.
Exactly. And, you know, if you have a family and you have financial obligations that are hard to meet, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You guys are lucky now because you're actually being able to support yourself from it. But there's millions, probably, well, maybe millions is hyperbolic, but there's thousands of bands out there, particularly in death and black metal and the more extreme vein, that literally they're getting gig to gig to get money to buy pizza, to buy gas, to just survive. You know that. You were there, right?
I mean, I was there for years. I mean, from 2008 to really to 2016, I would even say. It was like we went on tour in like the early days. You were lucky if you had a couple dollars at the end because, you know, most of the time it was like, oh, I guess we got to put $2,000 more into that van that we just broke or something.
Right. Or, you know, got to hit the credit card to keep going. And I don't think a lot of fans really realize that, especially when they're like, oh, you don't come here to play and you don't come there to play. It's like, we don't dictate that a lot of the time, you know, as a band. We're working through promoters that are helping us get gigs that we can survive. You know, and rarely does any black or death metal band that's not maybe say in the obituary or the upper tier where you guys are now at, okay, which you weren't at one point. You guys aren't you're just making enough to survive out on that tour to come back to your part-time teaching job or your factory job and you're doing it for the love of doing it to bring the music to the fans, to bring that experience to those people that want that. And, you know, that's why I don't think people understand, man, the importance of buying the albums, especially from like Bandcamp and from the artist directive possible, and buying the stuff, the merch at the shows, which is not easy anymore because now all the fucking venues are stealing essentially your 35-40%.
Huge thing.
So let's jump into Wayfarer a little bit. So because that's a little bit later than as far as when your involvement in that happens. You said you and one of your best friend, right?
Yeah, James.
James.
So just to get back there, so him and I were already playing in Santa Monica together at the very early age, and I met Shane from Wayfarer. Actually, this is a funny story. If you want, talking about Enslaved, and we're about to go on tour with them. So going back, Jamie and I were hanging out at our house. We were living together, and you know, we're like, well, it was the 2000. Oh, which year was it? It was like 2010 or 2011. Maybe before that. Whenever Axioma Ithaca Odini came out, whatever year.
2010.
So 2010.
Yep.
So that album is actually about to come out. Him and I are living together. We're in our kind of like, whatever you call it, like, young man's like
Bachelor pad. Just say it's a bachelor pad. Come on.
Yeah.
I know your wife's somewhere around there. She's listening in.
So we're, living our best, drinking beers and playing PlayStation kind of
Sure.
life. And we live not far from this local record store called Blackened, which I would frequent often as a young person, and found a lot of my, early albums. I think I even got my copy of the original pressing of In the Court of the Crimson King from there. Anyways.
Nice.
So Axioma, Ithaca Udini is coming out that day, and Jamie and I are like, let's go to Blackened. Let's go get a copy. It's just coming out. So we
right
there. And there are these two other, it's funny, we walk in the door and we're kind of asking about it. There's these two other metal guys, long, and they're like,
let me guess. Hold on. Let me guess. They have long hair. They might have facial hair, and they're wearing black shirts with band names on them.
Correct.
How did I know that?
It's almost like predictable. No.
Yeah.
But no, so we're and we're like, oh hey, like what are you guys looking for? And they're like, well, actually we're here for the new Enslaved album. And we're like, oh, we're also here.
So are we? Yeah.
And so we're waiting, and actually the woman behind the counter, she has to go find it. And so she goes and finds them, and she gets 4 copies. And we're like, okay, well, that's kind of funny. All right, cool. Well, whatever, see you guys around, I guess. Didn't even get their names.
Right.
And then we go, I remember I went to this party with my ex, and we go to this party. She's like, oh yeah, it's this guy that I know, like his birthday, and we know a couple dudes. We get there, and there's Shane, and I'm like,
okay,
you were at the Black Red buying an Enslaved record with this other guy, Tanner, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, we're starting this project called Wayfarer, and I was like, this sounds awesome. And so me and him had this like 3, how it happens when you meet.
Yep.
Have like a 4-hour conversation. I remember my ex was just like, God, you guys. It's funny now because now her and Shane are married, which is hilarious.
Are you serious? Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Okay, that's a little weird. We won't dig into that too deep.
Pretty funny. But my recollection, she was like, "Can we go home, Isaac? You guys are just..." And Shane and I were like, "Dude, you like Opeth? Oh, you also Moon Sorrow? Oh, you like Godspeed? You like Russian Circle? Oh, and it's just like naming bands, where you go." You start naming.
It's called the Metal Nerd Fest, is what it is. That's what it's. That's what's the official technical term of it. And it's like that. It's that age-old meme where the dudes walk into the beer, whatever they call it, the beer thing where all the beer is, and one guy opens up the thing and he looks over. Dude's got a Maiden shirt. The other guy's got like a fucking, I don't know, Dismember shirt or whatever. It's like they lock eyes, and the next scene is they're running through the fields throwing flowers and shit. And it's like, yeah, it's weird, but it's a real thing. It's a very real thing, right?
Real thing. And when you have a connection, and especially like in a small community, maybe there's not metal dudes around. And also, this is 2011, 12, and it's like
right.
People, and you I mean, better than me probably, but in the 2000s to that time, metal was not as cool as it is now. Yeah. No.
There was, I mean, the death metal thing had pretty much disappeared. It was Pantera. Yep. It was, and don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those haters on Pantera. They're not my favorite band or anything. But look, man, there's some killer riffs there, and Dime was what Dime was. And I mean, they kind of kept carrying the torch on, and everybody shits all over the grunge thing, which I am your age during the grunge thing, right? That's my thing that's happening that I can totally latch onto. And Alice and Soundgarden, 2 of my favorite bands, man. I don't really like the other stuff. I don't really listen to the other stuff, but I probably did back then at some point, and so I get a little bristly when people do that thing, like, but you're right. In the early teens of metal, it was just starting to kind of repopulate, I guess, if you will.
No, and that was like kind of an interesting time because that's when we were starting a lot of these bands. But there wasn't, I mean, at the time too, like Denver was like not a cool place. It was
Right.
not the destination that it is now. And it was bands wouldn't come here too. Like that's the other thing is like people who are from here will tell you it's like people like bands didn't come to Denver much. And it was actually interesting, like for example, Porcupine Tree or Opeth coming to like Boulder.
The Fox Theater. Yeah.
Opeth and Enslaved played there together, you know, and so
I saw that tour. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so then, you know, but that was like a once in a blue moon. Like when a band came, you were like, because it was always this jam band, you know,
all the metal dudes would show up, right?
Yes, like you know, I remember seeing Shane at one of these shows from like across the way. So then we finally meet and we have our whole like, you know, oh, you were at Black and Red, blah blah blah. Well, and it turns out then the first lineup of Wayfarer is Jamie, myself, Tanner, and Shane, and those four guys at Black and Red buying the new Enslaved album started a band.
How about that?
It was kind of this kind of happenstance thing, and now we're gonna go on tour with them, which is really cool. So yeah, it kind of comes all full circle there.
All full circle, yeah.
But that was kind of like, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's like that's where you find like that connection where it's like, oh my God, you're buying the same, you know, new Enslaved album. How many times does that happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's just that, there's that light bulb thing, you know, that happens, and you're like, wow. And I mean, let's say it now, like Denver is kind of the new Seattle sort of the last few years. Just a very, you know, potent mixture of bands coming out, many of which you're involved in, or you or Paul. I mean, you've got, you know, I could probably name at least close to a dozen bands that are coming out from there. And that's a good thing, man. I mean, you know, just for context, Isaac, I live about an hour northwest of Philadelphia, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm in the heart of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Dutch, the Amish community is very close by to me. But I'm also in a cool place because I can get to Philly in an hour and a half, roughly. I get to Baltimore in an hour. I'm a little closer to Baltimore because I'm more south. And then I get to New York in 3 hours.
Nice.
So when there was music happening throughout the, you know, the 80s, not so much the 80s, because, well, no, the late 80s, because I'd have been in my, you know, I graduated high school in 84. So my first shows were, you know, Kiss was my first show in 79.
Oh, wow.
Rush was my second show in 1980. And, you know, kind of carried on from there. And I always had easy access to a lot of shows.
Yeah.
If I wanted to jump in the car and drive to New York, once I was driving and old enough to do that thing, I did it a lot in my late 20s, 30s, into my early 40s. I don't do it much now because it's stupid expensive to go into New York City. It's just, you know, finding parking is $100 and crazy shit like that. But I still, you know, Killing Joke was probably the last show I saw actually in New York was Opeth at the Radio City show, the big, the huge 3-setter that they did, you know.
Cool.
PT, same thing. I'm trying to think. That was not the last time I saw PT. I saw them on the Radio City tour in 2012, which was their last show there until they came back over for the new album.
Yeah, did you see the new?
I did not see it. I'll tell you why after we're off. There's some health things I'm dealing with that are pretty not good. But I wanted to tell you a really funny story. You brought up Damien, right? So I'm trying to get Damien on. I just saw them a couple weeks ago. I love the Horrendous guys. Such awesome dudes, man.
Yeah.
Just awesome fucking guys, right? And I was down to see them in Baltimore about a month ago, and been trying to get Damien on. He got really sick, like right after that show, like really, really sick. So I'm hoping to have him on. But here's the weird thing. So I have some neurological issues I'm dealing with, like pretty severe ones, pretty bad ones.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you off air then.
Yeah.
But in July, I went to see my neurologist, and I was wearing a Death to All shirt because I've just gone to see, because I'm buddies with Max, and I just gone to see them. And now I've been seeing this neurologist for a year and a half, 2 years. She's like, that's right. I forgot. You're like a big metal guy. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I said, duh, you know. And she's like, do you know the band Horrendous? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I said, why? And she's so not a metal looking.
Oh yeah.
I don't want this to sound misogynist. Chick. She's not a metal chick, okay? But I don't mean it in that the way that.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean. But I don't want anybody
block it that she was into metal. Like
yeah, she's just not a metal woman looking like woman that's into metal. Typically. And I'm like, why? Like, it just was a weird question. I'm like, why are you asking me about Horrendous out of the blue? Like, how would you even know that name, right? It's like, why? I used to date the lead singer. I'm like, wait, what? Here, she was Matt's, the guitarist and singer, was Matt's girlfriend for like 6 years.
Wow.
in years back, like way back. So it was like, I'm like, are you serious? So I reached out to Matt. I'm like, dude, your ex is my neurologist.
That is wild.
So weird little
world, yeah.
Small world, exactly.
Well,
so
they're Philly area, yeah. So that
yeah, they're Philly. So and so yeah, it's not a huge stretch because she's just. I think she went to Temple. I think Matt might have went to Temple too. I'm not sure. But yeah, I want to get Damien on. So Damien, if you catch this, time to get back to me, dude. I know you were sick, but time to get on here. But so all right, so Wayfair is kind of an up and going concern, not maybe in the same respects as BI is, because BI's taken off pretty hard.
Yeah, so I mean, in those early years, Wayfair kind of started doing stuff quicker in a way because we were like, we're going to put out an album, and we did an album in 2014. And the Interdimensional.
Still to the Iron Age?
Yeah. So Interdimensional had been recorded in 2013, actually the year before, but then didn't come out until 2015, vis-a-vis the issue I described. But then, with Blood Incantation, it wasn't until we got the full lineup in 2015 when the EP came out and we got Jeff in the band.
Mm-hmm.
We really started, and that's actually the year that I graduated college.
Okay.
I got my teaching license and everything, and I was like, okay, well, I could either continue trying to get my, a job, a real job, as they,
right. I got you. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Or I could try doing this thing. And so in my life, it was like, I remember I did an interview to teach at Broomfield High School, and that's where I did my student teaching. And I was like, if I get this job, because I already had an in and because this was a good stable thing.
Sure, absolutely.
Like, if I get this job, then we'll have to see. That's where my life is gonna go.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I didn't get the job. And I was second choice to get the job. And my next option would be to continue interviewing, because that's what most people would do, is like, you just, okay, well, I didn't get one job.
Go to the next one. Yep.
Just keep going. But then I remember it was, Paul and I were talking, and he was like, well, I think we should go on a tour in October. And I was like, if I do that, I can't get a real job. I can't get a full-time position.
Right.
I was like, all right, well, let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. And so we went on the first tour, and it was the first time, I think I came back with like $400. And I was like, holy shit, I have $400 from a tour.
Oh my God.
That was like so crazy at the time, because I had gone on tours before, but it wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, sure.
And and then it was just like kind of started snowballing. And then I think it was immediately after that tour, we geared up and we recorded the first full-length Star Spawn, which I think was a really big moment in all of our
huge moment for sure.
Lives.
Did you talk to your parents like before you made like I mean, in terms of, because it sounds to me like your parents were extremely supportive of your musical aspirations, and actually in a lot of ways probably helped fuel them to some extent, right? But was that a moment where you're like, look, I'm going to interview for this job, and I got to kind of make a decision. If I get the job, or were you pretty much locked in like, look, dudes, talking to your bandmates, look, if I get this job, man, it's just going to mean some major changes. Were you having a lot of difficulty in going there? Or was it just like whatever happens, happens?
I think it was a kind of whatever happens, happens. I think I wasn't really talking to people too much about it. I kind of keep to myself about certain things, and I'm more
Okay.
Generally speaking. But I think I was talking to Paul a bit about it, and I was like, I might take this job. I'm not sure. And he was like, I don't know, man. Like, we could really go do some stuff with this band. And I was like, finally we had a lineup. Finally we had a record. We put up.
So Paul was your devil, and your angel over here. Paul's going, nah, man, you want to do this? You want to do this?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I think my stepmom, she was like, when are you getting a real job out of college? Like, what are you?
Yeah, don't you hate that shit?
And she's been always very supportive, but she was always kind of like, well, you're doing the bands, that's cool, but like, are you gonna get a job, like, or whatever? She's
looking out for you, looking out for your livelihood going forward. Yeah,
as parents should and do. And,
sure. Yeah.
But my dad has been a long time. I mean, he's very much he's done his thing throughout his life, just being a musician and just kind of living a vagabond existence in a lot of ways.
Okay, yeah, a little bit.
So I think, I've always had that kind of like juxtaposition of like, my stepmom.
Influences.
Different influences, exactly.
Yeah.
To me, then it was like, well, this tour, this is an opportunity I was 25, I think, something like that, 26. And I was like, had already done some touring, and I was like, well, let's see how it goes. And like I said, coming back from that, it was more successful than other ones. And then it just all kind of, each step, it just kind of got bigger and bigger. And it was like, hey, well, it was like, I could try to find a real job, or I can do the substitute teaching thing, and I can, make some decent money while I'm home, and then just try to make it work while I'm on tour. And then,
and then, like you said, COVID happened.
Yeah. And because Blood Incantation was able to kind of grow each time, and
right.
It wasn't ever like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen this next time. It was like, okay, like, yeah, like each time it was just getting better.
It's kind of rolling with it, right? And
like,
you're also young too. And that's, I mean, let's be honest here, man. If you were in your late 30s or your early 40s and you're still trying to make it happen, that's when shit starts getting real, right? When you're in your 20s, you got youth, you got health generally. If you're smart, which it seems you guys are, you're not like mega fucking party heads and all that kind of, not to an extent where it's like the 80s bullshit, that a lot of that's somewhat hyperbolic anyways to an extent. I mean, a lot of those lower tier 80s bands weren't doing that kind of thing, but I mean, you have that kind of youthful exuberance and energy to kind of bounce back, or maybe take some jobs to fill in until you kind of reach that denouement, that moment where you're like, okay, I got to make a real decision. And fortunately for you guys, it's really seemed to roll in the right direction, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a combination. What do they say? Like, success.
Hey, Isaac, just one thing.
Yeah,
your head's cut off just a little, like in the middle of your eyes. There we go. That's a little better. I was seeing this right here.
Yeah. So, they say success is like a combo of like preparation and luck, it's like, I think and this is what I would say, is like, whenever someone asks, like, what do you say to somebody who wants to start doing it, or who's interested in pursuing music? And it's like, you got to do it for yourself first. And I think many people say this, it's not, I'm not saying anything new here, but for me, it was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make music if it's by myself, because I did that for plenty of time. I could do it with bands. It doesn't matter if people want to hear it, I'll make it anyway. You know, it's always been that way for me. It's like I do it for me, and it is self-indulgent first. It really
Of
is.
course.
And it's like, what do I want to hear? What do I want to do? And I have to, and also part of it is like, I just have to do it for my own sanity. Like, it's just that. So that's the basis. And from there, it's like, you know, you find the right people. You're lucky enough to find those people who share that.
Sure.
And are talented and you vibe off of each other and you help each other grow as artists. And then, you know, eventually somebody says, hey, I like that and I want to hear more of it. And then, you know, I'm very fortunate to be in that position that people care about it enough that I can make a living at it right now. And so, you know, as long as that's happening, very cool. If if it doesn't work out, if, you know,
it's back to plan B, which may be whatever it is.
Whatever
it is.
And yeah. Like I said, I have a very supportive partner, and I know it's like whatever's going to happen, it's like we're going to figure it out. And so I feel like I'm in that nice place of being like, yeah, like you said, I'm young, and I was young at that early onset stage where, you know, you are sleeping on floors and you're barely eating, you're getting some ramen
and
doing like a bean and cheese burritos from Taco Bell, and that's about it, you know.
Yeah. It's like, hey man, save some of that money for beer. Let's just go real cheap, right? I mean, that's the reality of it, right?
Yeah, and so I mean, and also to your point too, I stopped drinking on tour actually in like 2019. I think I was like, no, I don't need to have a drink on tour, and that really shifted, I think, also the vibe on tour too, because it's like, you know, to us it's a job and it's a labor of love and it's something that we care about, and like, you know, it's more than just playing the show, it's also moving the gear, it's, you know, logistical, the financial things and all that, and you know, we need to be on the ball and we need to be giving our A game like an athlete or something.
And I can't imagine, just as a player myself, one, I've never been that guy that could get a few beers in and play well, ever. I just can't do it. I don't know how guys did do it or do it, because I don't get that, but I have 2 or 3 beers, I can barely fucking function, let alone, especially now as an older guy, but I cannot imagine getting on stage, even as a young guy, and trying to play hung the fuck over like I've had some bad hangovers, man. That's got to be one of the worst feelings ever. I've never had to do it, so I don't know what it's like. Well, but I can't imagine drumming and doing that would be insane.
Oh, it's the worst thing. Yeah, no, and I have been in the situation where I was hungover and had to play a show. And I think those experiences were like, okay, I need to, this is.
Yeah.
And it's not like I ever had like a problem with it. It was more just, this isn't, these 2 things are not meshing, you know.
They're not sustainable. They're not sustainable. Yeah, right.
And I don't understand how guys do it out there, just doing it every night. Just like, I'm like, I don't understand that.
You know, that's why I have some skepticism about shit like, you know, Motley Crue, like Tommy Lee chugging an entire bottle of Jack and doing 18 lines of Coke. And you're like, how the fuck was that guy even, like, how was he even, like, able to function? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right?
I've definitely watched some Motley Crue videos from the 80s that are pretty rough. So it could be true, but
I guess I mean, like, I know from my partying days back in my 20s and the early 30s that I did some crazy, stupid things, but I know for a fact I could not have been remotely on my game as a pro up on a stage, remotely being halfway decent in the shape that I see in sometimes. So that's great to hear, man.
No, yeah. And that's something that I would, you know, again, if someone asked me, it's like, what makes a sustainable band? And it's like, you know, bands that go out on the road and they spend their money on the beer and they, you know, just get, you know, fucked up every night, whatever, you know, it's like, to me, that's not what it's about. Like, music, if you want to go party, like, there's many ways to go party. And if you want to be a bar band, cool, whatever. But if you want to be like a serious artist and a musician, like, to me, that comes first, and, go have your fun, go do your thing. But like,
yeah, but it's not sustainable to be a really functional band, a creative functional band, if there's a whole lot of substances involved and you're abusing it. That's the other thing.
Well, and that's the other side too. It's like, how much is happening and how much of your energy is devoted to
that
and nursing yourself after the fact. And like, there's that one day and you're like, oh, I feel this has been an awesome time. And then it's just like, I think it was like a George Carlin bit where he's like, yeah, the pain just gets worse.
It does.
And that's, I'm
the older you get, the worse it gets. I'm telling you straight up. It's just real, Do I have you for about 35 minutes or so?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to touch on, go back to one thing for BI real quick. So you guys, and this is a weird thing, man, and it's so bizarre. I've tried to see you guys at least a half dozen times, and the universe has some serious fucking problem with me coming to see you guys, because the first time I went to see you was when you were out with Morbid Angel.
Yeah.
That you were in Baltimore. I'm trying to remember who else was on that tour.
Yeah, was it with Immolation and Necrot? Yeah.
Yeah, and well, this would have been 18 or 19 pre-COVID.
2019, yeah.
Yeah. So I had tickets. I woke up the day of the show, and I literally was sick. Like something was going through me, and I was like, man, I'm trying everything. I'm like, Imodium, everything. I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's no way I'm not going to make it to the show. So I didn't make that gig. And then you came back around. You did Decibel Fest, and I think I found out like after the fact, because I usually go to those, and I can't remember why I missed that, but I missed that one. And then you guys played Philly again with Immolation this time.
Yep. You
played a place called, I believe it was called the Mercury Lounge, which I've never been to before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so I'm driving down. I want to say it was like early September. It was real nice, warm, really nice day. I'm driving down. My car starts acting a little weird with like electrical. I get literally 6 miles from the venue, and the car dies.
Oh, what?
But it dies like literally like right a block from an AutoZone. So I walk up, and they come down. They test the battery. I just bought a new battery from them. They wouldn't replace the battery. Long story short, it was just a clusterfuck. I was terrified that I would get stuck down there. I didn't have a Mac card at the time. It was a long story, but I didn't have money. Was tight because of this medical issue. I was in a weird place. I had to literally make the decision. I'm like 6 miles from the venue. Do I go to the venue and risk driving home in the middle of the night out on the turnpike? No way to get anybody out there to get me if possible, if the car breaks down, or do I turn around and go home while it's still daylight? And I as an older man, I was like, I'm gonna make the smart choice here. So I missed you then, and then you guys didn't come around when it was Gorguts and Cannibal on the Cannibal Mayhem tour, or not Mayhem, Mayhem, and that you didn't come to Philly this time. It was the one area that got skipped.
Right.
I have a theory on. I think there's not a good metal promoter right now in Philly. I'm just guessing, because we're not getting a lot of real high profile shows. The Underground Arts is bringing some good bands in, but
yeah, that's the one spot, but that's a little small. Yeah,
it's small for guys. They never could have had Cannibal or something. So I wanted to add. So one of these days, Isaac, I may actually get to see you live. I'm not counting on. I am planning to be at the Wayfarer show, and I am definitely going to which you're not going to be at, but I'm definitely going to be at the Kung Fu Necktie show for Spectral.
Nice.
Yeah. So that would be cool, because I'm good friends with Greg from Esoteric, and we're stoked to hang out. Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you, though, was that Cannibal tour. I got to believe that was probably the biggest tour that you've been on in terms of professional ness, not so much like festivals or whatever. How was that tour, and what was it like? And I got to be honest with you, man, I'm not a huge Cannibal guy. I hate to say it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. I will say I was not either. Even growing up listening to metal, Cannibal Corpse was not one that was like top tier or anything.
Great live band though. No
well,
doubt.
And that's where my opinion on them shifted a bit, was when we toured with them the first time in 2019. So Cannibal did part of that tour with Morbid Angel.
That's right.
Nation did the other leg. So my first time touring with them, I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
This is a live thing. They're a pit band,
Fuck yeah.
They get the crowd going, and it's just heavy. It's just heavy music the whole time. And they're, in their 50s, which is pretty cool to see these guys still doing it. And I think they even said because we've played some shows with them around the world. We played with them in Poland also. So when we talked to them, and one of the things they said after COVID, they were like, that's the longest stretch that they haven't toured.
Yeah.
It's the inception of the band.
Crazy, right?
To me, it's just like, they're this crazy machine, this well-oiled death metal machine.
Iconic. Yeah.
I don't really find myself listening to them, on my own too much, but like, mad respect for that band.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, Mayhem's the same sort of thing. I'm not a Mayhem guy. It doesn't speak to me at all. None of it. Even Mysterious, I like it, but I don't love it. It's just not my niche of black metal. I'm like you. I'm a Dissection, Enslaved. I'm that kind, Dawn, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But again, mad respect for what they helped create and perpetuate and move forward. But I'm watching this tour Kevin is my guitar teacher, Kevin Huffnagel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're buddies. We go back quite a ways. And I'm like, dude, what is going on? Why is there no Philly show? And why are you guys in BI playing 25 minutes? Like, that's not cool. That's not cool. Like, if I'm going to that show, I want minimum 45, 50 minutes of both you two guys, and then let those other two guys have the scraps. I mean, I know that's not how it's going to work, but how was that tour for you guys overall?
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing tour. I don't know if Kevin told you, but they were on the bus with
you guys were hanging a lot. Yeah,
the bandwagon together, which was great to share. We were sharing gear and we were sharing space, and great guys. Colin is an old friend of mine too. Kevin,
sure.
I've known Kevin and Colin for a long time. Luke is just a sweetheart.
Isn't that guy the most amazing dude ever?
Legend. Yeah. So, I mean, so just that alone to us, like, I would honestly say, similar to you, I mean, I like Mayhem. I actually like The Mysterious a lot. I think it's a great record. But I am more on some of the other stuff. And so to me, it was like, well, Cannibal and Mayhem, those are like basically the two biggest bands of extreme metal.
Of the current genre. Sure, yeah.
But when our booking agent told us like Gorguts was going to be on this tour, I was like, like I said before, right? One of my favorite bands that I introduced Paul to, Obscura, and was a huge influence on Blood Incantation. It was like, Blood Incantation is like very, it's Death, Morbid Angel, Gorguts, and then you got the prog stuff, Camel, Pink Floyd, Krautrock stuff. So anyways, obviously,
I gotta show you this. Oh shit! Hold on. You just mentioned something.
Oh yeah, so sick. Nice. Oh, nice.
32 CDs. I've gotten through about 8 so far. I still have to get through and we mentioned Tangerine Dream. I have the 2 major box sets by Tangerine Dream because I'm like that dude. I gotta have all that. I gotta have this stuff. You know what I mean? I can't live without it. So
I have a couple box sets over here. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you there.
If you look right here, that's all box sets. I think I have 240 box sets.
Wow, that is
a little bit of
dream.
Now here's the thing, though. Here I could show you. So you see the flag up there, right?
Yeah. Rainbow. Nice.
And then you see that flag, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you see my bed's a mess. Sorry, dude.
No
I
worries.
did this from my bedroom.
Oh,
see that one?
Morning. Yeah. Nice.
And there's that one. And then
Nice.
now, do you think a woman ever comes into my bedroom ever? Ever? Never? Ever? I was married. I've done the deal. I've already been there, done that. So it's about me. But I just always make that funny joke. It's like no woman in her right mind's coming into my bedroom ever. You know what I mean? But yeah, man. So, and actually, I was gonna say, if you think our interview's going long, go watch the one that Luke and I did. It's only just under 5 hours long.
I mean, I tell you what, like him and I would, before the tour started, Luke and I would just have conversations like this for an hour or two.
Yeah.
And we talk about music sometimes. We wouldn't even talk about the tour. He's such a great dude.
Yeah, you wind him up and let him go, man. He's just that powerful personality. He's so entertaining and just a sweetheart of a guy, man. Just such a cool guy. So, but I was curious how that one went. And I think the funniest moment ever was, I believe it was Kevin. Kevin posted a picture on Instagram of him, Paul, I think it was Morris or Jeff. I can't remember which one. And they were in Walmart digging through the Blu-ray bin, right? The cutout Blu-ray bin. I'm like, imagine you're walking through your local Walmart as a metal dude, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be that guy. I'd be like, yo, what are you guys doing here? You know, most guys would probably be like, oh, we don't want to interrupt them or whatever. But I'm not that guy. But I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like, yeah, what a strange Walmart encounter that would be, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like we were kind of in those situations a few times there where it'd be like, you know, we'd be out and about. I remember, you know, we went to Peter Gabriel together.
Oh, that's right. You went to that show. That's right. Yeah.
We were super fortunate to be able to go. We had a day off, and Peter was playing in Ohio, and it happened to be on the route, and so we were able to stay there and got the whole team to go, and got Luke to go. He's not even a fan, which was really. Right. We were like, I was like, you want to go see Peter Gabriel? He was like, you guys go. It's fine. I maybe not so much. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then we were like, Colin was like, oh, I would love to go. And, you know, Kevin was super excited to go.
Oh, yeah, he's a big Gabriel guy, yeah.
And I'm a huge fan. And like I said before, like my parents, that was like something I grew up with, which I then as an adult was like, oh, this actually is great. This speaks to me. And I'm just so glad we went because we got Luke. He was like, oh, if you guys are all going, I'll go. And he was
cool.
As a music fan, he had never really listened to Peter Gabriel, but he was like, the show and the musicianship was just
crazy good.
And the visuals and everything. I mean, it was just an incredible show. And, you know, to be able to go, you know, Blood Incantation and Gorguts see Peter Gabriel, it was just like such a funny.
Well, again, like if I'd have been at that show and seen all you guys out there, I've been like, man, the rational guy here should be like, let them be. Don't bug them. They're just other dudes. Don't be a dork. But the dorky part of me would have been like, hey, guys, what's up, man?
Yeah.
Imagine seeing you. I wouldn't have been like that. I'd have been like, hey, man, great to see you guys here. Because I've been fortunate in a lot of ways to know a lot of musicians. I've been hanging out backstage many times with Michael and Peter when Peter was in the band back in the early days of Opeth, like Damnation and Deliverance era stuff. Because I knew him because of Steve, you know, the connection to Steven.
Right.
So, you know, there's that part of me that is like a little bit of a fanboy, but that I got to temper it by being cool, by not being a dick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hard to sometimes balance that, right? So my question to you is, how often do you get recognized outside? Or if you are, have you had any, and I'm not talking maybe day of show at the venue where you go to the local record store down the street, like maybe where you guys all go out to a vegan restaurant and you're hanging out and somebody just happens to be like, you're catching that vibe, like they're staring at you, right?
It does happen. Yeah. We call it being recognized.
Recognized.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it does happen. It's funny. I mean, it happens to Paul the most, which, as you can imagine, he's the most recognizable. Not too many guys with a skull like that.
Yeah, exactly. The skullet gives him away. Exactly, right? Yeah.
And then Jeff kind of second most because of the red beard. You know, it's not too many. If there's two of them together, it's just like if we're out in a city or out and about, I mean, it's almost, you know, guaranteed. But the funniest is the four of us together. You know, actually, this happened in Berlin while we were recording the new album, and we're just walking down the street. We're not playing a show there, you know.
Right.
Berlin, we're just living there, and this guy just riding his bike, and he was, I would say, close to your age, you know, a bit older than us, and he just stops and he says, "Blood Incantation?" And we're like, "Yeah," and he's like, what are you doing here? You know?
Yeah, what the fuck are you guys here? What?
Yeah, and we're like, oh, we're recording a new album at Hansa Studios. Like, what? You know? And so it does happen, and it's a very funny, but it's such a niche thing, you know, obviously.
Sure, yeah. It's not like so my daughter lived in Asheville, not Nashville, Asheville.
Oh, in North Carolina?
Yeah, until recently. She just moved to Nashville actually a couple weeks ago. But she was out, she worked for a not-for-profit, and she's out on the streets of Asheville, and I suddenly get this call. Now, she doesn't usually just call me out of the blue, and she's like, "Dad, call me back," because I missed the call. She's like, "I got to talk to you." I call her back. I'm like, "What's up?" And she's like, you're not going to believe this, but Robert Plant just walked by me, and I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "No, there's no way. There's no way Robert Plant's just walking around the streets in Asheville." And then I looked, and he had been there the night before with Alison Krauss. So I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute.
Wow.
It could be." I said, "Well, you know what you got to do? You got to be like your dad. You got to walk up. You go, 'Mr. Plant, I love your music.'" And she loves Zeppelin. It's like her favorite band. Yeah. She walked over to him, and she talked to him very briefly, and he was very nice to her. And then she called me back. I'm like, "All right, where's the picture?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't want to do that." I'm like, "What? Are you crazy?" I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?" And she's like, "Dad, I didn't want to be that person." And she's like, "That's you. That's not me."
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I actually have a story like that. I was at Hellfest what was this, 2022? No, 3? Oh, I'm trying to remember now. I want to say it was 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So we're at Hellfest. Or no, let me see. Hold on. We're at Copenhagen. Sorry, getting them confused. Copenhagen is in Copenhagen. And we're watching Kiss play at Copenhagen, which I had never seen them.
Nice.
And I wasn't ever like they weren't a band that like got me super excited about stuff, because by the time I was into metal, there was already obviously such heavier music.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And you weren't really strategically the age to be a Kiss guy. I am. That's my band, you know.
Yes.
And I stopped listening to him after 1980. That was the last time I ever paid any attention to him, you know.
Well, so I was always kind of like, it looks cool, but you know, it's maybe not for me. So anyways, I'm like, well, I'm here, we're playing the festival, you know, I might as well watch.
Yeah, sure.
So we're watching it, and I'm like, this is a great show. This is, you know, I'm having time. I mean,
absolutely.
Oh, that's for sure. So then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna walk back behind the gate where where all like the artists are and stuff. And we're like, Jeff and I are hanging out back there while Kiss is playing. And who do I see? I see James Hetfield just standing. And I'm like, well, actually, we walked past him, and Jeff goes, "Dude, that was James Hetfield." And I'm like,
"Yeah,
dude, oh my God, what do we do?"
Yeah.
And I'm like,
"Yeah, what do we do?"
I gotta go punish him, you know, at least a little bit. So I go up and I just say, and he's talking to someone else, and I'm like, "Hey man, hey Jay, you know, I'm a huge fan." And actually, I even said, I was like, "I know you probably get this a lot, but huge fan of your music, and thank you." And I just shook his hand, and that's all I did. I didn't get a picture, same as your daughter.
Yeah.
You know? But I could see it in his eyes, like, because he's backstage. He's like, this is that one spot where I don't want to have
that protected zone. It's the protection zone, right?
And I didn't, and I could have been like, oh, hey, man, I'm in a band. But I just didn't do that. I was just like, thank you. And I shook his hand.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, cool. I got
yeah.
It,
And you never know. I mean, like with some of these, what I would, for lack of a better way of putting it, bigger artists, I mean, whereas like if a fan comes up to you and says, hey, man, can I get a picture? I'm going to be honest with you. You're a total dick if you say no. That's just my perspective.
Absolutely.
Because you need every fan possible, right? That you can to kind of build that rapport. Now, if they're being weirdos, if they're being like, oh my God, it's like, my brother and my sister, can you come over and do this? And, that kind of shit's over the line. Or if you're eating dinner and they just come interrupt your dinner, that's not cool, right? Oop, there, you blinked out for a sec. You're back.
So this is just a great segue to something that I do want to talk about real quick that you're talking about. Because we're, as artists, we have our fanboy moments, and, I totally understand. And, but it was interesting. I remember I received a message to the Stormkeep Instagram, which is Order of Divine Light Instagram there, that was from somebody, and they were saying that, hey, I was at your show and we were asking you to sign something, but you wouldn't do it. And what the hell, that's messed up. And you're, you need to be better to your fans. And what I remember distinctly was, and this happens a lot, and this is just me giving maybe some people who are listening some etiquette tips or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
When an artist is on stage, right, it's okay to ask while they're on stage and getting their stuff off, because this is what was happening is like I was breaking down and we had to go, we had to get our stuff out of there.
Yeah, you're your own roadies.
We are, and I think a lot of people don't understand.
Don't get that. They don't get it. Exactly.
We're not yet at that point where someone's doing everything for us,
Yep.
We got to do everything. And I'm more than happy to sign stuff. I'm more than happy to take a picture. But when we're in the middle of that, sometimes people ask and I'm like, hey, sorry, I can't right now. Because if I do, right, then someone else is getting screwed up.
Exactly. Then it becomes a flock.
And so, and what I often say is like, hey, can you wait a minute?
Yeah.
And we're gonna be done here. And I remember distinctly, this happening at this show and being like, oh, sorry, we're not right now. It's gonna be a minute. And sometimes people get mad about that. And I think it's kind of like, it's not me saying no, it's like, I think
no, it's a time and place thing. Know the situation. Situational awareness is everything. And it's like, in general, I have never ever had an artist say no. Great story on that. Jerry Cantrell, one of my favorite dudes ever, man. Such a cool guy. He came out when they got back together with William and kind of reforged the band. He came out back at the TLA down in Philadelphia, a small venue for them, right? Yeah. He's out back. He's signing stuff. He's like, guys, I'll sign 3 things because this is 2009. This is when eBay and the fucking bullshit with people getting tons of things signed and then thrown up on eBay. He's like, I'll sign 3 things. Don't be a dick. Yeah, he's like straight up, like, don't be a dick. He'll try to get a bunch of stuff signed. I'll give you 3 things. 1 for you, 1 for your kid, whatever. And long story short, we're waiting back because earlier during the show, we were right up in front of him. He reached down at one point to hand my kid a pick, and my kid thought he was like slapping, doing one of these things. And my kid slaps the pick out of his hand, and he's like, like, whoa, what was that all about? He actually stopped, asked the house light guy to turn the house lights on, and he's talking to my kid and goes, he's like, hey, dude, I'm trying to hand you a pick. Don't slap out of my hand this time. And my kid's looking at me like, my kid's like 14 and like loves Alice and Cantrell. So cool, right? We go around to the back. We're waiting after the show. We're hanging back. There's maybe 10, 15 people. And there's that one guy, man. And this guy is octopus arms, man. He's pulling shit out of a backpack. And I'm watching this. I'm like, he's going to fuck this up for everybody, man.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, Jerry takes notice of it. And he's like, man, I told you, dude, you're being a dick to all these people because you're trying to get 15, 20 items signed. And he's like, sorry, guys, thank this asshole for that. And he goes inside, right?
Yep.
And I just unleashed on this dude, man. I'm like, you fucking jerk off, dude. Like, who do you think you are to do that for the rest of us who just wanted 15, 20 seconds and maybe a photo or a handshake and maybe an autograph? It turns out I knew somebody at the label, and the guy walked out the door right then and there. And he's like, oh, there you guys are. Pulls us in, and I get to hang out with the dudes for 20 minutes, which was cool. But there are those guys out there, and those guys ruin it for everybody. And it's like I said, man, I've been at places, Dream Theater. James LeBrie and Jordan Rudess are having lunch before a festival gig when they did that Progressive Nation thing back 15 years ago. And they're at a Chipotle or whatever. And I'm watching this, and all these fans are coming up to him at the table. I'm like, man, so uncool. And then James kind of loses it. He's like, guys, I'm eating fucking dinner. Can you wait out there? And can you wait out there? I'll sign everything. And then one of those guys is like, yeah, James is a real dick, man. He's like, treating us like shit because, you guys, you know what I mean? It's just not cool. Etiquette. Think about it.
And that's where it gets to. And it's like, on the other side, it's like, I mean, I love the support that we get, and the fan. A lot of Blood Incantation fans are just diehard. Like, it really is like this cool niche group of people, that are different than your average metalhead, which is very cool.
Yeah, and they're good people. So I mean,
anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I want to get you out of here in like 15, 20 minutes because it's been almost pushing 3 hours. So we're at 2.5. So I promise I'll get you out of here in the next 20 minutes.
No worries.
So American Gothic, did you guys expect the kind of response that it's gotten?
Wayfair is this band that like it's a grower, it's this thing that we've been working on for a long time. And I think Shane, the main songwriter, him and Joey are doing a lot of the songwriting together. But Shane really has come into his own to really like the songwriting and getting stuff like figured out with what the band is about. Has been like a process throughout the whole band because that was really his first project that he did. So what I was thinking, I mean, even when we were making American Gothic, I was like, okay, this is really a culmination of everything that we've been trying to do as a band. And it felt like a watershed moment for us. So when it did get this response where people are like taking notice of the band, and last album got a little bit of buzz, but it was like still very underground. But it's really cool to see people really like take notice of like where the band is going and the artistic direction, which I do feel like is very unique, and it is very like singular, and has like its very special place, that exists. And so, it's just it's exciting for that band to kind of get the attention,
the traction.
It's always been kind of working towards it. Whereas like, with Blood Incantation, it was kind of like from the start, Paul and I really kind of knew where it was going. Like, we had a pretty solid foundation, whereas Wayfarer has really been kind of evolving over time. So, and like same with like Stormkeep, for example. Like when I started Stormkeep, I was like, this is what I want to do. 100% like it's going to be this. And like, it obviously does develop still from there. But
and I want to get into that band next. I want to mention two band names that I'm curious if they ever had any nebulous sort of influence at all on Wayfair. Okay. One of my favorite all-time band, two of my favorite all-time bands of all times. Okay. Have you ever heard of 16 Horsepower?
One of our favorite bands as a band. Yeah.
Boom.
And they're from Colorado. Well, yeah.
Huh?
They're from Colorado as well.
That's right. David Eugene. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I saw Woven Hand back in right before pandemic, and I got to meet him, man, and it was like cool guy, man, really cool.
Yeah, very interesting musician.
Yeah,
artist.
and
Yeah.
and I mean, while Wayfair doesn't sound like 16 or 16 doesn't sound like Wayfair, there's that American Gothic, that revivalist sort of brimstone-y, fire and brimstone-y sort of vibe.
Yep.
And I just was like, man, I wonder if these guys know that band. I figured you would. This one, I'll be shocked if you don't know. And I got to believe there's a slight bit of influence, at least in the image department. Do you know who I'm thinking about?
You throw it at me.
Begins with an F. Fields of Nephilim.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, one of our favorite bands. Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing a thing on them last night, and I hadn't listened to them in a while, and I just forgot what a fucking banger of a band they were from start to finish. I mean, every album, in particular Elysium, is just a masterpiece.
10 out of 10, yeah.
Oh my God. And even Morning, which is more a Carl thing, but Morning Sun, just, is it too long? Yeah. Is it too extravagant? Yeah. Is it overproduced? Yeah. But it's a masterpiece in a lot of ways. I was just curious if at least the vibe and the look and the sort of thing had any kind of direct thought process where you guys are like getting into it and like, hey man, kind of like a Fields thing, or kind of, if that ever came up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I would say on the newest album, we actually kind of did a little bit less of the 16 horsepower, a little bit less of the Fields thing.
Right.
Although it almost gets like put in there in a more like bedrock form.
That's what I was alluding to. Like, it's kind of like a foundational thing.
Yeah, well, it is, absolutely. But on the last record, I would even say, like, I straight up borrow drum beats from 16 horsepower, 100%. Like the tambourine,
yeah,
kind of stick, rim clicking, like type of stuff. 100%, just like 16 horsepower, just like not even just like, I sometimes you'll hear something, you'll be like, all right, this is the perfect thing for this. And I feel like as a metal band to take some stuff like that, it's always like a fun thing. But there are also, sorry.
And I would say this, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but 16 horsepower is more metal than most metal bands. I'm just going to say that straight up.
Oh yeah. I mean
they're dark, ominous, foreboding, just visceral, very human, and that kind of dynamic of hellfire and brimstone with it's just such a cool band.
Yeah, such a cool band. And it's funny too because not dissimilar from, I would even say, Porcupine Tree, a large percentage of 16 horsepower fans are metalheads.
Yes.
And even like black metal bands have done covers of 16 horsepower and Woven Hand stuff.
Yeah.
Like Metal Fest and stuff.
Talk about Stormkeep, man. So that you kind of is maybe your most recent sort of thing that started to kind of level up, I guess is a way to put it. And so talk a little bit about how that all came together and because you have some similar players. I think Jamie's is he playing live with you, or is he not in the band? He's playing live, right?
No, he's in the band. So, we use these like monikers and pseudonyms and stuff.
Right.
But Shane and Jamie, both from Wayfarer, are both in Stormkeep as well. So
wait, Shane's playing bass, right? Jamie's playing guitar? Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah. And so on the original recording, I played drums as well, and I did guitar and vocals. And then we got a drummer from the last album, and then we're gonna we have a new drummer as well now. So it's kind of, it's evolving, but the last the full length that we did, Tales of Other Time, was a huge moment for me. I think that was kind of like, for me, like the culmination of like the metal that I really like, and this many different styles, but filtering them through this kind of idea of melodic and fantastical black metal.
Right.
And so that was a big moment for me to kind of culminate that into something. And so now we've actually finally moved to try kind of working on writing the next record. which is kind of taking its own shape and to own form. But it's a very involved thing for me because, like you said before, I'm the primary writer of the band,
Right.
and also I write the lyrics, which are very much like a storyline. It's all based on this kind of fantasy world. And
is it a video game sort of vibe? Like, does that play at all in it or no?
A little bit. I mean, I would, RPG. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
But then, like, also it goes to like, Ursula K. Le Guin with like, Earthsea and stuff like that, and like
right.
Lord of the Rings, and then film too. Like, I take a lot of inspiration for that band from like a lot of like fantasy, but also horror films and like stuff like that. And so it's kind of all over the place, but it's just kind of all shoved into this little box.
What kind of movies? Like, is there any other than Lord of the Rings? Obviously, is there? There's the kind of the weird Black Cauldron vibe to it. As you know what I mean? As a kid, you saw those. It just has that Black Cauldron vibe to it when I'm listening to it, right?
Yes, yeah. The what's the main villain's name? The Demon King or whatever. From
Oh God, you're gonna make me remember that. I am not gonna remember that. I'm too old for that.
Yeah, but that is like, yeah, exactly. And even going into some stuff like there's like that movie, a lot of 80s stuff. I mean, Conan and Dragon Slayer, and like Sword and the Sorcerer, just like a lot of these like 80s sword and sorcery, big epic kind of stuff. But then also into some stuff like even some anime stuff like Fire Hunter D and Princess Mononoke and
for sure
other stuff. And then getting into also some horror stuff, like even like I actually watch a lot of these like full moon movies like Subspecies and stuff like that. And then even more so it's like vampire stuff, just different stuff like that. And so
there's a lot of cultural influences that all kind of culminate in the fantastical, essentially.
Correct. And it just brings me to this place where it's just like, I kind of created my own little world there, I guess.
Right.
That feels like it's just like a place to be able to draw from, because there's the muse and you can always pull from different things, and every band has its own muse, I would say, like
sure.
Wayfarer is very deeply rooted in this American history and what it means to be an American, and what that feels like, and the trauma that our collective consciousness has here, that kind of stuff. And then Blood Incantation is very into this like hidden worlds, the ancient worlds that maybe we don't know.
Cosmicism of the
cosmos, and also just the human story that maybe we've forgotten, the amnesia, Graham Hancock and all this stuff of like Atlantis and places, lost to our collective consciousness and stuff like that, and also expanding that consciousness and space and all that stuff. And so every band has a new thing that it's like, if you're feeling to like and you were asking before, like, how do I have the energy for it? But it's nice to have these different things that I can,
switch gears.
If I've really spent all my energy on one thing, for example, we just did the new Blood Incantation record this last year, Wayfarer record, right before that. And so it's like, wow, that's a lot. But it's nice because then it shifts, and then, the writing process, we're able to shift into a new lane, and for Stormkeep, it allows us to kind of get into those different things. So, we're fortunate, and it also allows each writer and each person to kind of expand their own thing. And then you learn something from that last record you just did with that other band.
Now, was it important for you to kind of do the Stormkeep thing outside of the BI connections? So, notice that, obviously Spectral has 3/4 of BI in it, and then you have, you know what I mean, to have the different avenues of sort of where it's not like, well, it's just Paul and Isaac and Jeff and Morris doing 14 different projects under different names, right?
Well, and that's the important delineation that I guess we didn't talk too much about it, but with Time Wave Zero being such like a thing, but to us, when it's those 4 people, it's Blood Incantation. It doesn't matter what doesn't matter what we're doing. That's Blood Incantation. It's not, to us, it's like, yeah, there is a sound to Blood Incantation, but it really is the dynamic of those 4 people. It's really like such a different thing, and it's like it's really interesting where if you take one person out of there, it changes the whole dynamic. So when you have 4 people, it's like you get this really interesting concoction, I would say, and so to me it would be weird to do a different band with the same 4 guys.
Okay, right.
Like, for example, with 3, and what makes Blood Incantation really what it is that combination and Paul and I's different writing styles.
Yeah.
And then for Spectral Voice, it's Eli and Paul and their unique songwriting styles with that group of people.
Right.
And so then,
are you doing any writing with other people in Stormkeep, or is it primarily all you?
So I do have a little bit from the other guys, specifically Jason, who does keyboards in the band, and
Lord Dathar. What is it?
Lord Dathar, yeah.
Dathar, okay, sorry.
Yeah, and also Jamie as well. We work on it together, and actually on the EP, Jamie had some riffs that we were working in, but on the album it was like I just kind of like really dug into it. But that is not to say that those influences from the rest of the band, like there's still like, leads and harmonies and other things and arrangements that happen with the band, and then also Jamie writes a lot of the classical guitar pieces. Like he did write the Ode to Dragons piece on the album, and then the dungeon synth kind of stuff, like me and the keyboardist work on together. So there is the influence, and it's always like that group of people lends itself to new stuff. And actually, before, I'm not going to get too deep into it since we're getting low on time here, but but I have a new project happening.
I was just going to ask, so what do we need to touch on that we haven't, like Lykotonen or like Stoic Dissension, or that looks like that's kind of a sort of not happening thing, but what else you got going on? As if you needed more to do.
As if I needed more, right? I mean, that's always a special joke. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start something else, and my partner Katie's.
I was gonna say your wife is like, what the fuck, dude? Really?
Like, you got yeah, okay, cool. I mean, she's very supportive of it, but I actually have this project that is really coming together right now with Jeff and I and Takashi from Anatomia, and we're working on this thing. I'm pretty much writing all the music for it, but it's gonna be kind of this like cyber slammy black metal, with some touches of like some ambient here and there, but it's a very inspired by the Godzilla, kind of the older Godzilla,
the Toho stuff, the Toho,
like Showa and the Heisei.
Showa and Toa, yeah,
and kind of influenced by that, the vibe of that stuff, and it's actually being worked on right now, and so that's just a fun little thing that I'm doing. It should be coming out this year sometime. We'll see.
Cool, man. So Trevor says, I played Elden Ring Details, and it was all time. Now, here's the thing. This will show you you're talking to a really old guy, because I don't even know what the hell Elden Ring is. I have no clue.
It's a video game, and I actually haven't played it yet. I've heard multiple people say, like, oh, big Stormkeep vibes in Elden Ring, but I've actually never played it. But yeah, it's a newer video game. It's very fantasy. I think George R.R. Martin was involved from like Game of Thrones.
Oh, wow.
In writing the storylines, I think, of the video game. So yeah, I mean, I was
cool.
I need to play it. It's definitely probably up my alley 100%. Because I do play some video games like that. But more, I mean, I have like a PS3, you know, like I'm so like that, like, I mean, I feel like I'm always late to catch up to those types of things. But for example, like I played a lot of the Elder Scrolls games, like Oblivion and Skyrim and stuff like that. But then, you know, going back, you know, like, I mean, all the Zelda games and Final Fantasy and, you know, just all that stuff. It was always exciting. Just anytime entering a new world, it doesn't matter if it's a video game or a movie or an album, you know, like listening to like prog rock concept albums, you know, listening to Yes and Relayer, you know, and like the pictures on the front and like,
oh yeah, it just
art, you know, it's just,
yeah, it just opens up your whole perceptions about that creative thing. It just you know,
it's like, take me to another world, you know. And that's I remember someone saying like, oh, this is this escapism, you know, whatever.
That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I'm like, to me, it's like the world is not a great place in a lot of ways.
It just isn't. You're exactly right. and you don't have kids, right? I assume you
not have kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I don't think I need to tell you this, but I will. Do all that you're going to do before you do have kids. Because once that happens, it changes. Not catastrophically. I mean, I don't mean it from a bad standpoint. I mean, just it's monolithic how it changes the dynamic. Because I thought I was going to be a rock star once upon a time until I got married, and then my first child came along. I'm like, yeah, it ain't happening, man. It's just not. It's not in the cards. So.
And I do believe that is somewhat happened to my parents, that they were musicians and they were doing a lot of cool stuff, and then they had kids, and you know, it's like you got to support your kids, and you got to
your priorities change.
And my dad always said, you know, what's the difference between a musician and a large pizza? Well, a large pizza can feed a family of 4, and
yeah, exactly.
And, you know, so I think, you know, to me, I was always kind of that mind. I'm like, I'm not going to have, I probably won't have kids. And if I do, it's going to be
later on.
I got, you know, my albums are my kids, you know, I get that, you know, thing. And I know, you know, Stephen Wilson talked about it in interviews for a long time. I know he's got his family now, which is really cool, you know.
Well, he married into and had 2 stepchildren. It's a little bit, it's a little bit different. The dynamic is much different when they're 12, 13, 14 years old than when you're bringing little babies up. Trust me. I mean, my wife had to work a job. We had to work opposite schedules of each other just so we didn't have to pay crazy amounts of childcare. And I was every weekend, I was Michael Keaton, man. I was Mr. Mom. and the cool thing about that is it's allowed me to have an incredible relationship with my children. And the musical part of it, both my daughters are now really good musicians. My youngest daughter is actually in Nashville working on her own thing, which is really amazing. So, you know, and that's great. You know, I mean, it's a great thing. So I want to get you out of here, but I got a couple quick hitters. So, top 5 movies. Can you give me top 5 movies that and I know this is a fluid thing. It always is, right? But are there 5 movies that you would always say everyone should see these movies?
Well, so what I usually do when people ask me this is you know, there's a couple that I can answer, and then I usually have to go with stuff that's just in the rotation right now.
Right.
So, I mean, I would say one of my all-time favorite movies experientially is 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's just an important film to me. I think it's one of the most important ones. But from there, one of my favorite movies right now is this movie called Nemesis by Albert Pune.
I know that one.
It's a completely absurd action sci-fi movie from the 90s. But that's kind of really what I'm into these days, is like these like kind of weird B movies with just like the weird, you know, special effects, especially the 80s and 90s and stuff. But Albert Pune did he did a couple movies that people might know, but he did Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is
yep.
I'm a huge fan of that movie as well. And so then his, in my opinion, his like magnum opus is this movie Nemesis, and it's just complete insane like martial arts, explosions and guns and cyborgs and whatever.
Okay, off the chain shit.
Yeah, it's just, and it was before the Matrix too, and it's like I feel like there was some influence on the Matrix because you got dudes doing flips with like you know, trench coats and whatever. Anyways.
Oh wow, nice.
So that would be one. I just watched for the first time the other night The Burbs, which
Tom Hanks
with Tom Hanks, which was
such a weird movie, man.
Very weird movie. It's actually 100% my style. Like,
do you know the movie Neighbors?
I haven't seen that one.
John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. Dude, you got it. If you like The Burbs, you gotta rent Neighbors. It will. It's so classically out there, bizarro, man. It's awesome. Yeah.
No, I love that stuff. I love, like, Joe Dante did The Burbs, and like I love the original The Howling and like Gremlins, and Gremlins 2 actually is a complete insane movie. And that,
yep.
Really, the stuff that I like is just like, just take something as far as you can, you know. And then what else? I'm looking at my collection here.
Well, it's like looking at a Stuart Gordon movie, like From Beyond or Reanimator. It's in that vein, right?
Yes, absolutely. Love Reanimator and From Beyond. You know what? But I'm gonna put, this is my last choice that we're gonna put on Big Trouble in Little China. That's
Carpenter. Yeah. I love all Carpenter, so it doesn't matter what they pull from him.
I mean, that might not be his best movie.
No,
it's just one that I grew up with as a kid, and it just like imprinted itself. And there's just something about the absurd humor and the action and just the over the top. Like, I've always loved that stuff. I love kung fu movies too. So
what's your favorite all-time favorite horror movie?
I mean, The Thing is definitely up there. That's definitely one of the best.
Has to be, right? Yeah.
And then I would say from there it's like Alien, you know, I mean, there's the Halloween is up there.
Yeah.
What's another, I mean, all-timer? I would also say Night of the Demons is up there for me, honestly. It's a good
the 50s movie or the later one?
The later one, the 80s one, yeah.
All right, because actually it's ironic you say Night of the Demon. That's probably my favorite. You know the 57 movie?
I haven't
with
seen
Dana Andrews?
No.
Let me see it. Let me see if I can grab it here. You got to check this one out, dude. 1957.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me see if I can pull it out here. This is one classic movie, man. If you don't know this one, try to find it somewhere because it's a really cool story. You know, it's the typical good and evil thing, but it's such a fucking killer movie. I think you'd appreciate that one. All right, so top 5 albums that you have to have. They go to you with you to your grave.
Yeah, Desert Island albums. Okay.
Yes.
It's always, man, it's so tough.
I know these questions suck because tomorrow they change, right?
Absolutely. I would say Grace for Drowning by Steven Wilson is going to
Wow, okay.
That's probably my favorite thing he's ever done, I think. I mean, I like a lot of, I love a lot of his stuff, but
Yeah,
that was one that when it came out, it was just I think it was just a culmination of everything he did up until that time. So that was really good. I dig that one a lot. And then I would say, let's see. I'm gonna say Peter Gabriel, The Passion, which
yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Last Temptation of Christ. That record is just one that I feel like I can put on anytime, and I just it's just a great vibe, and it has a lot of the things that I like. I'm gonna put Hiroshi Yoshimura, Green, which he's ambient stuff.
Okay, so in the Eno-esque field, I don't know him.
Similar. It's kind of in the electronic esque kind of thing, but
okay.
Japanese ambient stuff is very unique. I think it's just got its own spot. It's just kind of doing.
Sidebar, real quick.
Yeah.
William Basinski. Are you familiar with William Basinski?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be having him on too. Soon in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Disintegration Loop's just hard to even describe, but I just grabbed a whole bunch of his catalog, and man, I'm just digging down into that deep right now. It's so hard to explain. It's so beautiful, most of it, right?
Similar in there is like Steve Roach and Michael Stearns and a lot of those guys, and from that kind of like the new age movement, but also in the ambient and the electronic and out of Tangerine Dream, because
sure,
all that stuff. So yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of a lot of that stuff, and I find myself listening to a lot of Japanese ambient and also just different kind of these Japanese jazz fusion and city pop and all that stuff from the 80s is just like, it's just like a really huge world of stuff.
Are you into noise at all, like Merzbow or anything like that, or is that because I've tried, man? I just struggle.
Yeah, no, and so I like Bass Communion, Steven Wilson's other.
Oh, fantastic!
Because it has that melodic quality, even when it's more noisy, it still has like some of that, and actually similar to that is like Tim Hecker. Which
love Tim Hecker, man. Tim Hecker's really cool.
Yeah, and
what's your favorite Bass Communion?
So where is it? I have it here. Let me hold on one second. It's definitely this one. Drugged, I think.
Drugged is awesome. So is that on part 2? Oh, you got the box set.
This is the vinyl. This is what is this from 2018 press that they did.
Is that Bass Communion 2 repress?
This is.
I don't have that one.
Yeah, I think it's just Bass Communion. I think it's just the first one.
I'll have to look up because the very first one was Bass Communion. That had the first part of Drugged.
Yeah.
And then Drugged part 2 was on 2.
Yeah, so this is both of them, I think.
Okay. That must be
version of the first one, I think. But yeah. No.
Well, do you know?
I also have Ghost on Magnetic.
Go ahead.
Ghost on Magnetic Tape is a great one as well.
It's awesome. Yeah. I was the very first person that ever interviewed Steven Wilson when Ghost on Magnetic came out about Bass Communion. I'll have to see if I can find that for you. It was 22 years ago or something like that. Yeah. I was the very first person to ask him, hey, can I interview you about Bass Communion? He's like, no one's ever asked me that before.
Yeah.
For sure. So it's kind of cool.
Funny story. When I met him in 2007, and I had him, actually, I'm now remembering, I had him sign my ticket stub, but I also had him sign, I did buy a Bass Communion that actually I bought Ghost on Magnetic Tape on the tour, and I had him sign it, and he was like, oh, I'm going to sign on the Dead Baby on the front. And he was like, I don't know if you're going to like this. And I was like, no, I like a lot of this type of music. And I was a teenager, but I was like, I already was listening to Sun and drone and ambient and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, it's really different from my normal stuff. I don't know if you're going to.
Yeah.
But
Well,
no,
that's when he was working with Dirk Series and Vidna Mana. He did all that real Dirk had him come on and do all the sort of drone stuff on those albums, like Spore, I think was one of them. I have all that shit. I haven't listened to it in a long time.
And Muslim Gauze as well. He did a record with as well, which is really cool.
Right, Brandon did stuff with that, and that is, Muslim Gauze is. I have to be in the right frame of mind for that. It's not easy listening at all. You got to work through that shit, right? So, last thing.
Yeah.
What kind of gear are you using for? Because a lot of my guys that watch, they love the gear stuff when I start nerding on gear. So, what kind? I saw you were you using a Warlock, BC Rich Warlock for the.
So for Stormkeep, I have a bitch, the BC Rich bitch from the 80s. Then NJ series, that's the red one. But I've been using, actually, I have it right here.
Yeah, everybody loves when guys show gear.
Yeah, so this is the one that I've been using for Stormkeep these days. So it's
okay, like a J series then.
It's the NJ series with just the regular kind of like Telecaster or
super strap body, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
What other stuff do you have? You said you got a bitch.
Yeah, so I got a bitch. I've got a Schecter guitar that I used to use. I've got a couple acoustic guitars, and I've got. I'm not as much of like a gearhead, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
But I find something that I really like, and I just I kind of roll with it. So. I have a few guitars. I do have a Warlock that I don't really use. It's kind of been, it's not set up, and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Do you find it funny? Do you find it funny at all that like when BI started to their profile started to raise, suddenly everybody in their brother wanted Ironbirds?
Yeah.
It was like everyone in the world, suddenly you couldn't find a fucking Ironbird on eBay for under thousands of dollars. Whereas before BI, you probably could have had them for next to nothing. And it
seems like a direct correlation, I will say.
There's no doubt. There absolutely is. I mean, granted, Trey was using them way back when, but it's just so weird how cyclical things kind of happen like that.
I mean, we started playing them because we liked them. I started playing them because of Emperor, but Emperor was playing them because of Morbid Angel, So they were. It's just like that's a cool guitar. Like it's just it, and also that the NJ series back in the 80s. Those are just the ones, So
I go with a completely uncool guitar. I go with a fucking Dean Cadillac, man. Roll with that. To me, that's the sexiest shape ever in a guitar. And all my friends are like, dude, that guitar is so lame looking. Like, what's up with that? I'm like. You just have no taste. That's the problem. That's all right. So let's wrap up with what's going on with everybody. BI has a new album coming sometime in 2024.
Yeah, so BI is coming here. The announcement will come soon, and I'm sure everybody will, get to check out what's going on. But for now, I gotta kind of just say that's when the new album is coming. And then let's see what else.
Wayfarer, you're going out with Enslaved in early March, right? And then in May, in May you're going to be in the States. Am I right about that or wrong?
Yeah, correct. So we're going with Enslaved here pretty soon, doing a full U.S. tour in May, and then we're actually going to go back to Europe in June and do some festivals out there with Wayfarer as well.
Who are you out with? On Wayfarer on the U.S. tour, I can't recall off the top of my head.
A band from Philly, Sonia.
Okay, you guys are headlining.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and that's okay. So when I said that, I will, assuming with my medical issues that I'm cool to go, I will be at one of. I think you're playing. Are you playing underground? You're playing underground, no?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the.
I'll have to look. I know I was like, I know I can hit at least one or two of these shows. So I'll definitely be there to.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
And I'll be like, hey man, don't take any gear off the stage. Sign my shit now, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stormkeep. What's up with Stormkeep then?
So yeah, Stormkeep is just we're entering writing mode, and we're just kind of just figuring out what the next place is, what the next thing is going to be, and kind of discovering what the new world of the new album is, and make sure that we're not doing Tales of Other Time Part 2. It's got to be something new. So that's all.
Are you going to stick with Van on that, because they do such incredible vinyl issues, man? They're so good.
He is amazing. Sven is amazing there. Yeah, we're gonna have to see how things shape out, where things are at, where when the new album is coming, then we'll cross that bridge. But we're very happy working with him. So,
anything else? Any other major projects, and other than the one that you talked about with Jeff? And
yeah, no,
what's that called again?
Well, we're still working out a name.
Okay,
and we're gonna see where things go with that, but yeah, we got some stuff there. Lykotonen might have some remix album coming, and always working on some new stuff. So we'll see what happens.
Is BI? Are there plans in works for a bunch of touring with the new album, or is that not? Have we not reached that level yet?
I will say that we will basically be trying to do a world tour.
Okay.
Yeah, and bringing Blood Incantation to another level. With the stage show, which is the goal.
Ooh.
To really just try to really be the Pink Floyd of death metal is the goal.
That's going to be killer, man. So Paul, I'm sorry. Eric is not going to let you out of here without giving us 2 more albums. So
yeah.
he was counting, man. He was counting. I lost track after 1, but my ADHD.
2 more albums. Yeah, he's like, nah, I'm not gonna let you off the hook here. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna have to say Emperor Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk is gonna be in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Black metal albums.
Even over Eclipse, huh?
Personally, that's my personal choice there. I love In the Nightside Eclipse, but the grandiosity, the production, the just the scope of Anthems is just really that really defined music, metal and black metal to me.
Have you met any of the Emperor guys when you were out on tour?
Met Don, and I did get to take a picture with him at Psycho Las Vegas, but I was just very hey, great to meet you. Just didn't bother.
Yeah.
But yeah, huge fan of him, and even the stuff that he's doing now is cool. He's doing, really stuff, but that era of Emperor is really that's the stuff
special.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to last record. I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna say, damn.
These are horrible questions. I get it. It's a horrible question.
Spot is always the tough one, because then it's which one am I? And I'm actually looking at my wall of records right now.
Yeah, and you're you're leaving out about 42 other records, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna say Revolver by the Beatles. That's what I'm gonna say.
I was gonna ask you what your favorite Beatles album is, and you know what? That's my favorite actually too.
And I would go, I used to say Sgt. Pepper because that was just a really defining record for me. But I find myself listening to Revolver more.
Well, there's 2 songs on that album that are mind blowers, and that's She Said and Tomorrow Never Knows. I mean, especially Tomorrow Never Knows. That's the killer Beatles track for me.
Yeah. And honestly, too, Eleanor Rigby and
Got to Get You in My Life and
Beeping. Yeah, it's just got so many one after the other.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I want to thank you so much for 3 hours and 15 minutes of your life. You're probably fuck, man, I can't believe I did this with this guy. But I did warn you what you were kind of in for. So
yeah, no, and actually I appreciate this kind of interview more than, your kind of everyday, like the same questions being asked all the time. Like, oh, where'd you get your band name from? You know, it's just a lot of time. You just kind of get asked the same questions. So when I saw that you did a lot of these kind of more expansive things, it was interesting to me. So thanks for having me. And, you know, it just feels like two blokes just having a chat about some cool music. So
this would be us sitting at the bar, having a beer or two, and just nerding out on killer tunes and all the similar influences. I guess I have to ask this though: what's your favorite Rush album? Be careful what you say.
Right now, I mean, that also shifts for me sometimes. And
Which one?
I was gonna say that always shifts for me, like which one is my favorite at the time.
Okay.
Similar to, like, you know, some of my favorite band, like Porcupine Tree. Sometimes I'm really into one and I'm like, okay. But like Hemispheres is the one that I would say I'm just always kind of down to listen to. It's just Tree.
Hemispheres are Farewell 1 and 1A. They're just like kind of
Moving Pictures is the one that my drum teacher was like really about. And as a drummer, I avoided listening to Rush for so long because of Neil Peart and people just being like, Neil Peart, you know, and just as a drummer, it's kind of like people are just like, oh, Jimi Hendrix. It's like, okay, you know, okay, I get it, you know. And then I got to be a bit older and I finally listened to them and I was like, wow, okay, this is actually great. And so, I mean, just that whole stint of that time, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, I think that's just like,
well, dude, from Fly By Night through I would say, quite frankly, through Power Windows.
Yeah.
A flawless discography, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that includes Caress, which a lot of people are like, eh. I mean, yeah, it's got Going Ball on it, which is kind of a weird song, but otherwise, I mean, it's got the fucking Necromancer on it, man. Come on. Like, does it get any better than that, right? And you know it's pronounced Payart, not Pert, right?
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
according to Jason Segel, man, my favorite movie. It's like Mr. Payart, you know. All right, dude, hang 1 second for me. I'm gonna sign off here, and just only major show notes. Oh shit, did I lose you? I guess I lost him. Only major show notes here are we've got the Hamish Glen Cross on the 19th. I've got we're working on the Stephen Wilson thing. Hopefully that's coming soon. There's a couple other ones that are kind of hanging out there in the balance. We're going to work on getting the traditional Island series resuming again or whatever. And we'll kind of go from there with regards to, I do need to sort of take a little bit of a break for maybe a couple days here or a week or two or something like that, because I've been pumping a lot of stuff out and I've got some medical stuff I got to deal with here coming up tomorrow. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks to everybody that was hanging out. I don't know if Hamish Glencost is coming up on the 19th. So thanks a million to Isaac for putting up with that insanity for 3 hours and 15 minutes. And appreciate all you guys that hung out. We had almost 20 people watching the whole time, and hopefully it was a good informative and fun interview for everybody to watch. And I'll catch you guys later. I think that's all I got. Anybody got any questions? No, we're good. All right. See y'all.